Chapter 1194. Not to mention that there were leaky walls everywhere in this base. Even if Boss could pretend for a day, he couldn't pretend for a month. Sooner or later, his identity would be exposed. He couldn't pretend for a few days at all. But as the boss of the base, he was so persistent to be Feng Ling's assistant and to train a group of newcomers with unknown qualifications. Was the power of love so great? Boss Li, who was so great that he used to avoid women when he saw them, now almost wanted to be with Feng Ling every day. It was really too frightening. On the first day that Li Nanheng pretended to be the deputy drill master of the training camp, Feng Ling looked at the deputy drill master that Ah Feng arranged for her. She was already calm enough not to roll her eyes on the spot. After watching him silently for a while, she knew that Ah Feng probably didn't dare to compete with Li Nanheng anymore. If he did, his power and charge would be removed, and his face would be hurt. Ah Feng was sent here by the 4 elders of the Li family, and he was the Li family's representative. She simply waved her hand, asked someone to keep the deputy drill master here, and let Ah Feng go first. Then, this group of immature newcomers saw with their own eyes a deputy drill master who was stricter than Feng Ling, even fiercer, and even like a devil when training them. How could this training method be like this? This kind of training was no different from corporal punishment. Drill Master Feng Ling asked them to run 1 kilometer with a weight of 50 kilograms. But as soon as this deputy drill master came, he directly asked them to run 3 kilometers with a weight of 100 kilograms. This was simply killing them. However, strangely, when the deputy drill master made this request, Feng Ling, as the main drill master, just glanced at him and then didn't say anything. She didn't refuse him. Who was the main drill master and who was the deputy? Why didn't Drill Master Feng Ling show her cold temper at this time? The reason why Feng Ling didn't say anything at this moment was that she was not sure what was wrong with Li Nanheng. He should also know that these newcomers had not received systematic training. If he was too harsh, their bodies couldn't bear it. He should even know better than her how the newcomers should start little by little. But he still asked them to carry this weight. Obviously, he was merciless. For what? She recalled carefully. Just now, when the members were taking a break, Wanka seemed to have filled her cup with water and then sat next to her and asked her several questions about her usual physical training. She held the cup and patiently answered him. After that, Li Nanheng, who had been merciful, turned into a devil. As she thought of this, the slightly dull, emotional thread in her brain suddenly snapped, as if she had found the source of the problem. At this moment, the usually cold-faced demon goddess looked thoughtfully at the young lads who were running with weights in the camp, and then at Li Nanheng. The man casually picked up her cup and took a sip. Then he frowned, as though there was something wrong with the taste of ordinary warm water. He poured the water away, rinsed the cup with water, picked up the simple thermos in the camp, and poured a cup. Then he walked over and handed it to her. "Drink it." Feng Ling. She didn't take the cup. Seeing that the members had run far away and couldn't see her, she looked at the man in front of her and said seriously, "Li Nanheng, you asked me to return to the base and arrange for me to be the drill master of the newcomers. Since you've paved the way for me, I'll take over this baton and continue to work hard. I'll try my best to complete the task given to me with 100 points." Hearing her words, Li Nanheng knew what she was going to say. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just wanted to help you because it's too tiring for you to take care of these kids alone. Is there a problem? You're the boss of the base. Do you think there's a problem? Why? Can't boss go around incognito? Can't he teach the newbies? After the training period, there will be a screening assessment for Team 1 and Team 2, and then there will be a follow-up elimination assessment. If your identity is known by the people of the other team, what will they think? If boss comes to Team 1 to supervise and guide them, the newcomers of Team 2 will all collapse? Well, when my identity is exposed, I'll go to Team 2 to keep an eye on them for 2 days, which will consolidate the morale of both teams and mobilize more enthusiasm. 2 birds with 1 stone, the man said calmly. From what he said, it seemed like he had already thought about it. Feng Ling was speechless and stared at him for a long time. There are too many eyes in the base. I can't hide my identity for too long. I don't have so much time to play disguise with these kids. When I'm not busy, I'll come to help you. Otherwise, I'll leave, okay? Seeing that she was staring at him, the man softened his voice and coaxed her. I'll try not to torture them. With that, the man's eyes became slightly cold. As long as those boys who overestimate themselves in front of you know how to behave. Feng Ling, Wanku, he's an orphan like me. I know. These 3 words were enough to show that Li Nanheng trusted her, but at the same time, it didn't mean that he wouldn't be jealous. Feng Ling's understanding of love was really limited. She didn't know what kind of love she had. She just watched a man who wantonly killed enemies on the battlefield standing in front of her, patiently telling her his thoughts, wouldn't tolerate misunderstandings, wouldn't let her repeatedly avoid rejection, and would be jealous because of a boy who loved her so much. She didn't speak anymore, but just looked at the man. After a long time, she moved her lips and said, "He is a good seedling. I'll guide him normally and train him normally. Is that okay?" Li Nanheng didn't speak, but raised his eyebrows and looked at her indifferently, which clearly meant to say, "Do as you see fit." It was just a very simple relationship between a drill master and a newcomer. They usually talked in front of everyone. What was there to be jealous of? Feng Ling touched her forehead and didn't say anything. She took the cup of water that the man had handed to her for a long time and put it in her hand. She lowered her head and took a sip of water, feeling that this water tasted no different from the water that others had poured for her before. However, when she looked up while drinking, she saw Li Nanheng's expression as if she were drinking some magic potion. She resisted the urge to roll her eyes at him and turned back to continue drinking water, but the corners of her mouth couldn't help curling up. Chapter 1195. At noon, Feng Ling found the answer as to why Li Nanheng cared so much about Wanku. After running for so long, the newcomers were so tired that they almost collapsed. At noon, they finally went to the canteen of the base to rest for a while. So they went to the canteen in groups and sat in their respective seats, talking about today's events in private. Men were always rude to each other, and they were certainly dissatisfied with the arrangement of the deputy drill master today. I don't know what the leaders of the base are thinking. Why did they send such a cold-blooded devil to be the deputy drill master? If I had run another 200 meters, I think I would have vomited blood and died on the spot. Yes, but this kind of old man is probably still an old bachelor after staying in the base for so long. He is so depressed and twisted that he is used to abusing others. Hearing the words, old man, Feng Ling, who was drinking water at the table, choked. Only 27 or 28 years old. She suddenly looked up at Li Nanheng, who was sitting diagonally opposite her, only to see that the man put down his chopsticks expressionlessly and continued to listen. That's right. Drillmaster Feng Ling doesn't seem to be very old, and the drillmaster of Team 2 seems to be in his early 20s. Why did the base suddenly send such an old man? He must have been in the base for so many years, but he only got the position of deputy drillmaster. Tut, tut, tut. Feng Ling. She looked at Li Nanheng again, only to see that there was no anger on his face and even a faint smile on his lips. But it was worse than a smile. It sent chills down her spine. But then again, in the eyes of teenagers, was 27 or 28 years old. Seeing that Li Nanheng was about to get up, Feng Ling abruptly picked up a drumstick from her plate and put it into his plate. Seeing this, the man paused and glanced at her. Feng Ling was not good at coaxing people, but she felt that these newcomers had been with her for a few days. She instinctively wanted to protect them, but she didn't want to make Li Nanheng too angry. So she could only use this unskilled and awkward method to throw a chicken leg to please Boss Li, who was worth 10 billion yuan. At the same time, she forced a slightly stiff smile. Boss, eat the chicken leg. Li Nanheng looked at the chicken drumstick that suddenly appeared on his plate, and then at Feng Ling's forced smile. The corners of his eyes twitched. At the table not far away, the newcomers who didn't know that Feng Ling had lost a drumstick because of their words were still whispering. At this moment, their topic had shifted from the new deputy drill master to discussing various levels of status and class in the base. Speaking of the position distribution of drill masters in the base, although the new drill master was a drill master, he had the lowest basic position, which was equivalent to the bottom of the lower class. The assistant drill master of the new drill master was even lower than the bottom of the lower class. It was really a failure for him to get this position at such an old age. Then they continued to discuss until they talked about Off Fang's position, and in the end, they suddenly didn't dare to say anything. Then someone trembled and asked what the legendary Bosley was. They immediately shushed him and then lowered their voices. Bosley is already very intimidating. Okay? Keep your voice down. I don't dare to talk to other people, but I don't dare to talk to Bosley. Bosley, who had just been tortured by their words for a long time, sat at the table expressionlessly, endured Feng Ling's awkward and polite smile, and listened to these idiots. In the end, Wan Ku and another member of the new team, after seeing Feng Ling and the deputy drill master's faces from a distance, hurriedly sat at the table and coughed a few times. Only then did they suddenly look back, saw Feng Ling's expression, realized that they were whispering too loudly, and hurriedly shut up in fright. But it was useless to shut up now. When Feng Ling took the initiative to gently put a glass of juice in front of him, Li Nanheng smiled faintly and pushed the juice back to her. In the afternoon, the devil's training continued. He was too gentle and spoiled these newcomers, spoiling them so much that they didn't even know the immensity of heaven and earth. That afternoon, Feng Ling met the devil who singled her out to train alone. Well, he was even worse than that devil. The youth training team under her command, Team 1, had collapsed from exhaustion after 4 hours of training in the afternoon. In the end, someone couldn't stand it anymore. When Li Nanheng answered the phone and left the training ground, he sat crookedly against the camp and complained with a sad face. Is the deputy drill master so powerful? Why does he set rules for us? Drill Master Feng, he even despises your position. He must have a psychological problem to torture us like this. The others also echoed weakly. He is simply training us to death. Several people said desperately, I'm afraid that if this goes on, we will die on the training ground before the screening assessment begins. Wonka was worried. Wonka said with a heavy heart, since we've entered the base, we'll receive this kind of devilish training sooner or later. It's okay to break through our physical limits. I'm just worried that you'll be bullied by the deputy drill master because you're too young. We can't do anything about it. You just decided on our training mode, but the deputy drill master broke your original plan. And you seem to be dissatisfied with it, but you can't stop Drill Master Feng. Will he try to seize power and take your position as the chief drill master? Wonka said with a heavy heart. How can 19-year-old boys say that she was too young? And he was worried that she would be bullied by others? Wonka smiled. It's not as complicated as you think. This kind of training beyond our physical limits is not bad, except that it's a little tiring. I also experienced this kind of training. If we find our physical limits as early as possible, we can break through our limits as early as possible. In this way, when the screening assessment comes, if our team can have more than 5 people, we may be able to have more than 10 people in the end. There's no harm in having more people. The member who spoke first sat there, sweating as he said indignantly, Oh no, Drill Master Feng must have been bullied by that old fox. We've been with you for so many days. How could you speak up for him? 4M. Chapter 1196. Did she obviously speak for Li Nanheng? Only then did Feng Ling realize that she seemed to be protecting Li Nanheng's image in front of these people just now. But the point was that they caused this result. They talked nonsense in the base cafeteria. Although they knew that Boss Li was not to be trifled with, they didn't even dare to mention Boss Li's name, but they still fell into Boss Li's trap. This afternoon, because of this matter, she didn't interrupt and let Li Nanheng torment them. In any case, he was the boss of the base. He knew what he was doing and wouldn't kill anyone. She had been picked out by him to train in the base, but she didn't die of exhaustion. After all, she was an elite member trained by him. It was not a bad thing for these people to experience this early. She was just telling the truth. We're all brothers in the base. There's no bullying. What did you learn outside at such a young age? In 11 base, there's only brotherhood. There's no such thing as level suppression, Feng Ling said lightly. But Drill Master, you are a woman. You treat them as brothers, but they don't necessarily treat you as brothers. I think the deputy drill master is obviously bullying the little girl. Someone complained. Another person suddenly said, as if there was a flash of light in his eyes, Hey, do you think the deputy drill master likes the drill master? Drill Master Fong is so beautiful. There must be a lot of people who like her. That's right, but Drill Master Fong, you must keep your eyes open. You can't like anyone. The deputy drill master is fierce, violent, and has a bad temper. More importantly, his level in the base is even lower than yours. He is really not an ordinary person. Ah Fong happened to come in at this time. Suddenly hearing these words, he held back his laughter and walked behind Fong Ling. When he cleared his throat, the newcomers who were still complaining were scared and quickly shut up. Drill Master Fong, the date of the first assessment of a youth training team has been arranged. This is the training program that needs to be evaluated. Take a look. Ah Fong handed a document in his hand to her. Fong Ling took a look at it and didn't say anything. At the same time, Ah Fong said earnestly in front of everyone, "The deputy drill master you're talking about is a big shot that everyone in our base is fighting to have him guide. Hundreds of members have been waiting for many years, but they may not be able to get him to guide them personally. Be satisfied, Ah. What do you mean by big hands? Is it the deputy drill master's devilish training method?" Someone objected in a low voice. Ah Fong smiled. "Did any of you faint from exhaustion?" Everyone thought about it and didn't say anything. It's not so easy to break through the physical limit. Many drill masters in the base try to let their members break through the limit as soon as possible. But if the strength is not well controlled, or the training procedures and order are wrong, many people will suffer muscle strain or other physical damage. But your current deputy drill master seems to be merciless to you. But does anyone have a muscle strain? Does anyone feel that they are useless? Which training is not done according to the standard procedures. Everyone, if one day you know the identity of this deputy drill master, you will be scared to death. How dare you criticize him here? Don't you see that even a stubborn and cold-tempered person like Drill Master Fong is willing to temporarily retreat to the second line? It's not your fault that you are young, but it's your fault that you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If you don't know how to observe people's words and expressions, you will only suffer more losses. After being inexplicably reprimanded by the manager of the base hall, those members who were complaining just now didn't say anything anymore. However, each of them had a huge wave in their hearts, and they began to doubt the identity of that deputy drill master in fear. Li Nanheng had just received a call and went to another training camp. When he came back, he suddenly heard the conversation inside. Fong Ling also felt that they didn't cherish such a good opportunity. There were very few opportunities for Li Nanheng to personally guide them. She had experienced it herself, so she knew that although Li Nanheng seemed to be too lazy to guide those members, as long as he really spoke, he would never make a mistake. Whether it was his physical strength or his teaching ability, he was definitely not ordinary. However, he was used to being a hands-off leader and was too lazy to lead the team. Usually, most of the tasks were handed over to the drill masters in the base. Except for the sniper team that he personally supervised, no other team had such an opportunity. Fong Ling also said, "Ah Fong is right. When I was a newcomer, I was at the same stage as you. I suspected that I would die of exhaustion on the training ground, but later I found that the sooner I could surpass my physical limit, the sooner I could dig out my potential. This will also be of great help to the absorption of physical strength in all aspects in the future. If you can stand firm under the training mode of the Deputy Drill Master, I believe that the final screening test results will be very good. Maybe none of you will leave, and you will all be able to stay in the base safely." Stand firm? The members were still sitting on the ground, so tired that they didn't even have the strength to speak. After a long time, they said, "All right," but she still couldn't help saying, "Drill Master Fong, no matter what, you're still our main drill master. How can you ignore the fact that someone stole your limelight? Why are you speaking up for him? Is it responsibility? Is it cowardice?" Yes. Li Nanheng couldn't listen to it anymore. He coughed, and there was silence inside. Then, as if he hadn't heard anything, Li Nanheng entered the training camp inside and glanced coldly at the members of Team 1 who were temporarily resting on the ground. Ah Fong held back his laughter and said in a low voice that only she could hear, "It's love." Fong Ling, apart from Boss Li, there was no other person in the entire base who could make someone as bad-tempered as Fong Ling to stand aside silently and take a back seat. Even if Feng Ling had her own ideas, Bosley had personally promoted her back then. Bosley had personally taken her out for training. In terms of physical training, as long as Nanheng spoke, she could be considered as half a little disciple to him. How could she say more? Why are you sitting there? Haven't you had enough rest? Come back to the team in 3 minutes and go to training, Li Nanheng said coldly. In a short sentence, the group of people on the ground trembled in an instant. They were so tired that their limbs were trembling, but they didn't dare to resist, so they got up with a sad face and continued to train. 4M. Chapter 1197. Li Nanheng didn't show any attitude, but he was in a good mood. Thinking that Feng Ling, who usually didn't talk much, was defending him in front of these young boys, he smiled. He was well aware of the physical conditions of these new members. Even if he was just a deputy drill master, as the person in charge of the base, he had habitually checked the information of all of them before they entered the base. All of them were healthy young men who could withstand torture. Now, they had been severely tortured on the training ground. Just like arrows on the battlefield in ancient times, the harder they were polished, the brighter and sharper they would be. Moreover, these young boys were indeed in need of torture. If they practiced hard, they would be too tired to sit together and gossip, and they would know that it was time to shut up. But there were still some who were not sensible. For example, in the evening, they finally went back to rest. Tomorrow was the weekend, and Li Nanheng was going to put aside the matters in the base for 2 days and take Feng Ling out to have a good rest. However, before Wan Ku went back to his residence, he had been following Feng Ling, asking her if she was free on the weekend and if she wanted to go out for dinner with him. He also said that he had never lived in Los Angeles before and wanted Feng Ling to take him out for a walk. He asked, and Feng Ling answered. The base hall was close to the place where the newcomers lived, so Wan could walk side by side with Feng Ling. Although he was only 19 years old, he was already more than 8 meters tall and didn't look like a child next to Feng Ling. On the contrary, Feng Ling's skin was fair and her eyes were clear, and she occasionally looked like a clean and steady high school student with short hair. Seeing that Feng Ling was very serious about these newcomers, Li Nanheng endured it. Seeing that the boy kept pestering her, he didn't say anything. Han Jin and Xiao Su were looking for him, so Li Nanheng went straight to the conference room. When he returned to the base hall, he saw that Wan Ku was still following Feng Ling, and neither of them seemed to be in a hurry to go back to their respective residences. The two were sitting on a bench near the hall. Feng Ling was holding an assessment document and talking to him. Wan Ku was sitting next to her, listening carefully and nodding from time to time. When he nodded, he turned his eyes to Feng Ling, who had been staring at the document in her hand seriously, as if he couldn't wait to stare at her. Since she had become a drill master, it was natural for her to be strict and indifferent on the training ground. But now, in private, when newbies came to ask her all kinds of things, she could sit there and answer patiently with a calm and steady attitude. She didn't notice that Wan Ko often looked at her with admiration and admiration. She just looked at the document in her hand and said patiently, "Every batch of newcomers in the base is greatly expanded, but in the end, only 1/5 of them are left. Many of them can't even pass the most basic physical assessment, so the base won't let them stay. If you want to develop in a base, you should practice more on these subjects. In addition to training on the training ground, you can ask other brothers to help you stretch your limbs and do balance training. It won't take much time. Just do it on the ground for a while before going to bed every day." Suddenly, the light in front of her and Wan Ku was blocked, and a large shadow fell in front of her and Wan Ku. Feng Ling paused, raised her eyes, and suddenly saw Li Nanheng. It was already night, and the light in front of the base hall was bright enough. But if the light was blocked, she couldn't see anything clearly. The man's back was to the light behind him, so she couldn't see his expression clearly. But Feng Ling instinctively felt the coldness around him. She subconsciously looked at Wan Ku, who was very close to her, thought of something, and hurriedly moved aside. Wan Ku also raised his eyes. When he saw Li Nanheng, he was wondering who this deputy drill master was. Why did he seem to be everywhere? "Deputy drill master, why haven't you gone to rest?" Wan Ku raised his head and asked with a smile. Although he couldn't see Feng Ling's expression, He couldn't continue to pay attention to Feng Ling's cold and oppressive gaze, so he raised his head and asked with a smile, "Deputy Drill Master, why haven't you gone to rest yet?" Feng Ling put the document on her lap, and before Li Nanheng spoke, she said, "Wanke, you can go back now. It's really late. If you have anything else to ask, I'll ask you during training." "Okay." Wanke nodded, took out his cell phone, and took a look at the time, and suddenly said, "Drill Master Feng Ling, although this is the base and everything is under military management, you are still a girl after all. It's so cold in Los Angeles. You don't wear much every day." Feng Ling, "Fortunately, I wear a lot of clothes." She was wearing clothes that could keep her warm. In fact, she wasn't cold at all. It was just that she looked thin. Before she finished speaking, Wanke suddenly took off his own jacket and handed it to Feng Ling. "Tomorrow is the weekend. I heard that we can move freely these 2 days and don't need to train. Put this jacket back on. Don't catch a cold." Feng Ling hesitated and didn't take it, feeling that if she took it, something might happen. Li Nanheng's cold voice rang at this time. "I thought this batch of newcomers was not familiar with various aspects of the base, but it seems that this little brother has a good relationship with Drill Master Feng Ling." The man's voice sounded flat, but only Feng Ling could hear the cold tone in it. Wanke smiled. "Is that so? Maybe it's because Drill Master Feng is a good person, and Drill Master Feng and I are very similar in many aspects. We're the same kind of people and have the same experience. We're the same kind of people. 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 Who the hell is the same kind of person as you?" As the boss of the base, Li Nanheng's calm barrier, which focused on the overall situation, was shattered with a crack. The indifferent smile on Li Nanheng's face disappeared completely. He loosened his collar and nodded. "Yes, we're the same kind of people." Feng Ling clenched her fists because of Li Nanheng's words. She looked up at the man standing against the light and didn't take Wanke's jacket. At the same time, she hurriedly stood up. "All right, let's go. I'm going back to rest." Li Nanheng expressionlessly pulled Feng Ling over and abruptly pulled her in front of him. Feng Ling, before she finished speaking, she fell into the man's arms. 4M. Chapter 1198. After bumping into him, Feng Ling's expression remained calm, but her ears were already slightly hot. Li Nanheng hugged her and let her lean against his chest. He lifted her chin and made her face him. Clarify the relationship between the base. Li Nanheng pressed her with his hand and looked at Wanke, who was shocked. "Do you need me to do anything?" Feng Ling leaned against the man's arms and could hear his strong heartbeat. She paused and suddenly looked back at Wanke. When she was about to speak, Wanke looked at them in surprise. After a long while, Wanke said awkwardly, "Deputy Drill Master, I'm still a newcomer in the base. I don't know, so many interpersonal relationships in the base. I admire Drill Master Feng Ling very much, and I feel confident because she used to have the same past as me. Although Drill Master Feng Ling is usually cold and strict, I can see that she's actually a very gentle person. So I often ask her all kinds of questions, but I didn't expect." Wanke was a little embarrassed when he heard this. He paused and said awkwardly, "I didn't expect to make you misunderstand me. I'm really sorry." Li Nanheng sneered. "Just admire her? Who would believe that? Admire her?" Every day, during the break between training, he stood by the thermos and almost took on the heavy responsibility of pouring water for Feng Ling. During meals, he also rushed to get food for Feng Ling. As long as there was an opportunity and time, he would stay by her side. Right now, he even dared to let Feng Ling wear his coat in front of Li Nanheng. Was this admiration? He was trying to poach Feng Ling from Li Nanheng. Didn't expect what? I didn't expect her to have a man, and her man is in the base, right in front of you. You didn't even give her a chance to take advantage of you? Wanke, Feng Ling, Wanke looked at Li Nanheng's cold expression. He knew at a glance that Li Nanheng's identity was not so simple. After all, Drill Master Feng Ling was usually so strict and cold, but in front of Li Nanheng, even Ah Feng, the person in charge of the base hall, was very polite to this deputy drill master. During the day, Wanke didn't pay much attention to the deputy drill master because he was too tired to think about it. But now that Feng Ling was forcefully held in the man's arms, Although she felt that it was inappropriate, she did not break free or say anything, which was enough to show that the relationship between the two of them was very harmonious. At least, their relationship was definitely two-way, and neither party was passive. Drillmaster Feng Ling was so beautiful, so nice, and it was said that she had a very good record in the base. Such an excellent person, who was also the only woman in the base, had a relationship with this mysterious deputy drill master, which showed that the status of this deputy drill master was definitely beyond his imagination. Your drill master Feng Ling is my girlfriend. Not just my girlfriend, but also my wife who will spend the rest of her life with me. She will announce to the world that she will marry me. Li Nanheng looked at the boy. So, stay away from her, understand? Wan Ke suddenly woke up. Although he wasn't sure who this man was, he couldn't afford to offend him, so he didn't dare to have any improper thoughts. Got it. Seeing that this boy was smart and knew when to advance and retreat, Li Nanheng casually put his own uniform jacket on Feng Ling's shoulders. If you understand, then get lost. I have something to say to your drill master. Wan Ke hurriedly put on the jacket in his hand, and being stared at by Li Nanheng's cold eyes, he quickly left. Feng Ling was really annoyed by Li Nanheng's strong possessiveness. Just now, in front of the new members, she didn't want to embarrass Boss Li. Seeing that he had left, she turned her head and glared at him. I was talking to him openly outside the base hall. He didn't do anything to me, and I didn't do anything to him. Why are you so jealous? Li Nanheng lowered his eyes to look at her. If I hadn't known his temper, I would have kissed him in front of him. Feng Ling, she knew that he would definitely do that. Although Wan Ke had scared away her men, it was not a bad thing. If Wan Ke could see the truth earlier, he would not take any detours. After all, apart from being smart and good at interpersonal relationships, there was nothing wrong with him. The world was unfair. Not everyone could climb up smoothly by being honest, especially an orphan without a backer. If he wanted to shine in the crowd and have a place in the position he wanted, he had to rely on his clever mind and means. She had also paid attention to Wan Ke's attitude. He was indeed very earnest to her, but in fact, he was only 19 years old. It wasn't easy for him to sneak into the base, so he didn't have much time to think about love. He just wanted to show his ambition and make the people above him like and accept him. He wanted to settle down here, so he was good at flattering others and didn't have any bad intentions. If Wan Ke really had feelings for Feng Ling would have avoided him long ago. She didn't want to miss such a smart, purposeful, and capable person. She hoped that he could seize the opportunity and develop well in the base. He doesn't have any bad intentions for me, and in my eyes, he is still a child. Although Feng Ling was still in Li Nanheng's arms, she didn't break free. If he dared to have any bad intentions, do you think I would let him stay until today? Li Nanheng sneered, hugged her tighter, and kissed her hair. Don't go too far. These boys are still young, but they have all passed puberty, especially for such a cold and aloof woman. Seeing her walking in front of them every day, they can't help but have bad intentions for her. Feng Ling's lips trembled. How can I be so popular? How can they have bad intentions for me? Why can't I see that I'm so good? The man raised his eyebrows. He held her head and kissed the top of her soft hair, but his voice was still cold as he said, "Very good. This old man has never made a wrong choice in this life. Especially right, it can't be any more right. Fortunately, that kid is smart. Otherwise, he might not even have the chance to participate in the newcomer assessment." Chapter 1199. Fortunately, although he is young and impetuous, he didn't dare to do anything to you. Li Nanheng's tone was still cold, and his slender fingers rubbed against Feng Ling's dry lips. Otherwise, I might really do something impulsive in front of him. Hearing the words impulsive, Feng Ling suddenly looked at the lights and surveillance cameras outside the hall and said in a low voice, "Even if someone wants to do something impulsive to me, they have to be able to get close to me. They can't beat me." She could understand Li Nanheng's mood after being left out for so many days after returning to the base. Otherwise, she would have pushed him away and rushed back to the hall alone. Tomorrow is the weekend. Let's go out. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows and didn't continue to talk about other people. Instead, He hugged the woman in his arms tighter. Their first assessment is arranged next week, so they can only take time to rest this weekend. It's time to give me some benefits. Feng Ling coughed and didn't know where to put her hands. After a long while, she gave a low and, seeing that she didn't resist, Li Nanheng was very pleased. He rubbed this little woman who seemed cold and ruthless, but was very soft to him after being enlightened, kissed her on the back of her neck, then kissed her on the cheek and whispered dirty words in her ear in a voice that only she could hear. Feng Ling's face instantly flushed with embarrassment. She quickly pushed him away and turned to hurry into the door of the base hall. Although she didn't seem to be angry on the surface, only she knew that her legs were a little weak because of the man's words. She felt as if there was a fire burning on her head. Alfong had just come out of the bathroom in the hall, and his hands were still dripping with water. He glanced at Feng Ling, who was walking in with a straight face. He had seen what happened outside just now, but it was not appropriate for him to intervene. Seeing Feng Ling's expression, Ah Feng smiled and teased. Drillmaster Feng Ling, the base is an important place. Be careful. Under Ah Feng's teasing gaze, Feng Ling was even angrier. She went upstairs without saying a word. Bang, 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 bang. On Saturday morning, there was a steady stream of gunfire on the shooting range. This location was far from the living quarters of the base, so the base members who could sleep a little longer were not disturbed. Only those who got up early on the weekend could hear the sound. She slept well and woke up early. She did not feel sleepy and returned to the sniper team's training camp. She held her sniper rifle and warmed up for a while. It had been a long time since she stood in front of a row of targets to train. She felt very good when she picked up the rifle. After practicing with the sniper team for a while, she took advantage of the fact that there was no one here to practice shooting over 100 meters. Kay and the others had a mission to go out today, so they got up early. They were about to leave when they passed by the shooting range. When they saw Feng Ling, they couldn't help but click their tongues. He had never seen a girl like Feng Ling who looked so valiant when she put on a uniform and picked up a gun, but looked so quiet and beautiful when she took off the uniform. Fortunately, Feng Ling was taken away by Boss Li, and no one dared to covet her. Otherwise, as long as Feng Ling was given a chance, the other boys in the base would fight for her. So handsome, so handsome, so handsome. Tam, who was walking with Kay, couldn't help touching his chin and clicking his tongue. Very handsome, right? You must have never seen Feng Ling put on a facial mask. Kay held back his laughter as he walked. Put on a facial mask? When? Tam squinted at him as if he had heard something impossible. Her? She can put on a facial mask? Are you kidding me? Really? Kay took out his cell phone from his pocket, opened the photo album, and handed it to him. Look, is it her? Just a few days ago in the hospital, I saw it with my own eyes. Because I took this photo, she chased me all over the hospital. Tam looked at the cell phone and then looked incredulous. Damn, the sun really rose from the west. Feng Ling can put on a facial mask. It's not that I can't understand. After all, she has confirmed her relationship with our boss. There are many women in love who try to become beautiful all day long. However, Feng Ling is probably the only one in this world who doesn't go to find her boyfriend on a weekend morning. Instead, she runs here to practice her shooting skills. Two men pass by here sneakily with their cell phones in their hands, looking at the back of Feng Ling holding a gun. It wasn't that she didn't feel the gaze behind her. Feng Ling was having a good time practicing her shooting. After leaving the base for so many years, it was rare for her to have some fun, so she ignored the two of them. However, their gazes became more and more ambiguous. She suddenly stopped and casually pulled the safety on the gun. She glanced back at the two of them coldly. Receiving her cold gaze, Kay's hand trembled, and he quickly put away his cell phone, for fear that this photo would be snatched away and deleted by her, and then he took Tam's hand and ran away quickly. Feng Ling practiced for a while, and suddenly heard footsteps approaching behind her. She was very familiar with Li Nanheng's footsteps, so she knew it was him without looking back. Li Nanheng didn't have the habit of staying in bed. Even on weekends, he had a fixed time to get up. At this time, so early, there were not many people who could come to the shooting field. She guessed that he must have been shocked by her gunshots. The man didn't disturb her and let her practice here alone. After watching her use more than a dozen bullets here, he walked over and put one hand on her waist behind her. Feng Ling paused, but didn't look back. The man raised his hand to adjust the angle of her arm holding the gun and let her aim the muzzle at the most difficult 12 consecutive targets in the shooting field. With one hand on her waist and the other on her wrist, he adjusted her posture and said, "Shoot." With a bang, the bullet quickly passed through the overlapping 12 consecutive targets, and the red center in the middle of the series of targets emitted a wisp of white smoke because of the rapid passing of the bullet. The angle was extremely accurate, right in the center, without the slightest error. At this moment, Feng Ling felt as if she had returned to many years ago. In the base, Li Nanheng also occasionally taught her by the side. She felt hot all over and was about to put down the gun and turn back, but suddenly felt the man behind her press her into his arms, bend down, and kiss her on the lips. Chapter 1200. The gun fell from her hand and landed on the table in front of the shooting range, and the man turned her body around. It was a weekend morning. It was rare that there were no slogans or footsteps in the base at this time. There was no one around. The man's kiss was gentle and affectionate, not as rough and direct as usual. Obviously, the way she stood here and practiced shooting hard also brought back a lot of memories. Most men were too lazy to recall the past, but Feng Ling had the ability to make a man like Li Nanheng recall some memories from many years ago. There was nothing better than watching his wife grow up bit by bit in front of him. The man was moved and hugged her, kissing her reluctantly. Li Nanheng smiled and kissed the corner of her mouth again. He pinched her chin with one hand, gently rubbed her rosy lips with his fingertips, and looked at her deeply. "Drill Master Feng, you're off today. Accompany me out of the base and find a place to have a good fight. How about that?" Feng Ling smiled and said, "How about you accompany me out of the base and find a place to have a good fight?" Under the man's attack, Feng Ling nodded with a sullen expression. Of course, she knew what a spar was. Li Nanheng was satisfied. "What are you two doing?" Han Jin had long heard the gunshots here. Everyone in the base had practiced shooting until they were sick of it. Hearing such diligent movements, he guessed that it was Feng Ling. When she was in the base, she often came to practice alone like this. She was more serious and diligent than anyone else, and the frequency of shooting was almost the same as in the past. After eating a few mouthfuls of breakfast, he was about to go out to buy something on the weekend, but when he passed by here, he saw the two of them kissing each other. He was so angry that his teeth almost fell. Is boss really going to take the lead to completely change the atmosphere of the base? Does he think Feng Ling is still a tomboy and can take the opportunity to kiss her? Now everyone knows that she's a girl. In public, are you two talking about love in the shooting range? Li Nanheng said lazily. In public? Where? Han Jin, who represented the crowd by himself, was speechless. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Although it's indeed gratifying that little Feng Ling is back, don't forget that Ah Feng is very strict now, especially now there's still people. Hoping that one day, when the two of them quarrel and break up, Feng Ling will leave the base in a fit of anger and give up the position of drill master. Han Jin looked at Feng Ling again. Although the position of drill master for newcomers doesn't sound as powerful as the position of deputy drill master of the shooting range, there's still a lot of people keeping an eye on it. Do you know how many people are waiting to catch you? In terms of raw strength, they really can't find any fault with him. However, those people from Team 3 also know about this. They've been complaining about him in private ever since he came back. Now, they often talk about this matter with boss in private. Even a small movement can be made into a story from all angles. I really have to give it to them. A group of men can actually talk so much nonsense when they're unhappy with someone. It turned out that those people in Team 3 who didn't like her would definitely be unhappy. However, since she came back, she hadn't had a chance to contact them, so she didn't pay attention to them. She didn't listen to other people's private gossip, so she didn't know what they were talking about. It was rare for Han Jin to see Feng Ling. After all, she was really too busy in the past few days and had been in the training team. When he saw her, he just gave her a few words to remind her in case she heard some unpleasant word from Team 3 one day and got angry again. However, Feng Ling said calmly, "When I came back to be the shooting coach, I was really guilty and didn't want to take such an important position. But as a drill master, I can still bear the responsibility. I'm not afraid of them talking about me. If they don't like me, just come and fight me." Hearing this, Han Jin raised his eyebrows and then smiled. He didn't expect Feng Ling to say such arrogant words. It was really rare. Feng Ling was even more arrogant and condescending. "Even a few people may not be able to beat me. Do I need to take the words of this kind of trash seriously?" Li Nanheng didn't say anything. He just looked at the woman with calm eyes in front of him, and the smile on the corner of his mouth didn't disappear. Han Jin's words were also to give her a heads up, so that she wouldn't be able to live with herself if she really encountered something bad. But the current Feng Ling was no longer the Feng Ling of the past. In the past, she was cautious, silent, and tried her best to reduce her sense of existence. She was unwilling to offend anyone. She used to be quiet in the base, which left a deep impression on others. She was the only one in the base who knew her well. Now, although she was not high profile, she had no intention of spoiling those people who were not worth mentioning at all. Now, her heart was firm and steady. The experience outside for the past 3 years had also made her regain a lot of confidence in the way to get along with people. She would no longer blindly hide from those who were right and wrong. Instead, she would deal with the situation according to the situation. If the former Feng Ling was a piece of unpolished jade waiting to be carved, now she was a high-quality jade that had been carved and was even emitting light. She was no longer the little Feng Ling who needed everyone to drive her emotions and drag her to participate in all kinds of fun, nor was she the little Feng Ling who trained hard every day and waited to advance by leaps and bounds in every assessment. She was now Feng Ling. She had grown up, had her own views, and had her own outlook on life. Of course, Feng Ling didn't know how praiseworthy her rare arrogance was in the eyes of men. She just stared at Han Jin. "Drill Master Han." "Oh no, it's Minister Han." Han Jin had long been promoted in the base. Back then, he was the leader of the best team one in the base. It was said that he had been promoted 2 years ago. Han Jin felt that Feng Ling seemed to have something to say, so he raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Feng Ling didn't want to say something. She recalled that she had accidentally heard the conversation between Han Jin and Xiao Su outside his room. At that time, Han Jin had casually said, "It's just a fruitless love. There's no need to take it to heart." Although he had only said these words to comfort Xiao Su, she had kept it in her heart for many years. It was because she knew that Han Jin was actually on her side that she really wanted to ask him if he had ever liked anyone. However, before she could ask, Li Nanheng saw that she had been staring at Han Jin and took her back into his arms expressionlessly. "Why are you wasting time with him? Come on, let's spar." Han Jin looked puzzled. "Spar? Where are we going?" Li Nanheng turned away with his arm around Feng Ling and waved his hand in the direction of Han Jin. "I don't have a common topic with this kind of eternal bachelor. He won't understand, even if I explain." Han Jin. "Dash, the meat is already stewing. Eat some biscuits first." Calm down, our boss Lee is not really an animal. His mind can't be full of sex. He has to be sweet first, right? Chapter 1201. Upstairs in the base hall, Feng Ling had just changed out of her black uniform when she suddenly heard a text message from her cell phone. She picked up her cell phone and saw a screenshot from Li Nanheng. He said that she had bought tickets for the afternoon cinema, and it was a couple seat. The cinema gave her a small gift to choose from, including some cute dolls and some simple toys. Cinema? Was he going to take her to the movies? Feng Ling had never watched a movie outside. Although it was tacky in the eyes of other couples, in her eyes, she was looking forward to trying it. She felt a little sweet in her heart. She chose a pair of Mickey dolls and then asked, "What kind of seats are the couple's seats?" A few seconds after she sent the message, Feng Ling was about to take her coat when her cell phone vibrated again. "Li Nanheng, there is no partition in the middle. As soon as the lights are turned off, I can do whatever I want to you. I can kiss you if I want to. Are you afraid?" Feng Ling glanced at the phone screen and did not reply for a long time. Li Nanheng then sent another message. Will you let me kiss you? It was as if he could stop kissing her just because she said so. Feng Ling's finger paused on the screen for a while, and then she replied embarrassedly, yes. On the other side of the phone, Li Nanheng saw this word and a punctuation mark and smiled. Although it was the weekend recently, because of the newcomers, the atmosphere of the entire base was very busy. This rare weekend rest was also because Ah Feng was scared by Boss Li and had to let Feng Ling rest temporarily. The newcomers also rested for 2 days today, and all of them were very happy. When Feng Ling left the base, she was wearing a casual sportswear, a black hooded sweater, a white woolen coat, and black trousers, which made her slender legs look even longer. She looked clean and neat, but still in her usual simple and casual style. Her bangs were long enough to cover her eyes, and she casually tucked them behind her ears with her fingers. Before leaving the base, she was bumped into by a newcomer in her team. Seeing that Feng Ling was not wearing a combat uniform, he whistled at her from a distance and asked her if she was going out. Feng Ling was looking down at her cell phone, and her cheeks were a little hot after hearing Li Nanheng's words. Suddenly hearing the newcomer's voice, she suddenly put her cell phone back in her pocket and glanced at him expressionlessly. Her eyes were cold and indifferent, which was completely different from when she was in front of Li Nanheng. Li Nanheng drove the car out of 11 base, and Feng Ling sat in the passenger seat. She was just going to watch a movie, but her heart was full. What do you want to eat? We'll eat out for lunch and dinner. Think about it first, in case it's not easy to park the car. Li Nanheng said as he handed Feng Ling a bag of beef jerky. The theater is far from the base. It will take at least an hour to drive. Eat something to fill your stomach. This beef jerky was something that the members of the elite team had run out last night. When they returned, Li Nanheng bumped into them, and they hurriedly handed it over with guilty expressions. Feng Ling held the food in her arms, thinking that she was not a foodie, but it smelled good. She took it out and tasted it. It was a little hard, but very fragrant. She chewed hard and narrowed her eyes to look out of the window. After eating one, she subconsciously took out another and put it in her mouth. I'm asking you to fill your stomach, not to eat it in one go. We'll go for lunch later. Li Nanheng smiled. Okay. Feng Ling responded and quickly placed the beef jerky back on the seat. She then found an unopened bottle of mineral water in the car and unscrewed it to take a sip. As soon as she took a sip, Li Nanheng suddenly said, Give me a sip too. I'm thirsty. Feng Ling was about to open a new bottle for him, but Li Nanheng glanced at her. Your bottle will do. With that, he looked away and continued to drive. Feng Ling, she paused for a moment and glanced at him again. Seeing that he was focused on driving, she unscrewed the mineral water in her hand and brought it to his mouth. As Li Nanheng drove, he drank 2 mouthfuls of water from the bottle she fed him. It was not that he had never kissed her before, and they had done more intimate things, but this action of taking the initiative to bring the bottle to his mouth was still very unbelievably intimate. If it was Feng Ling who was still in the base a few years ago, she would never have thought that one day she would fall in love with Boss Li, leave the base with Boss Li to watch a movie outside, let alone take the initiative to feed him water like this. Along the way, Feng Ling held the bottle of water thoughtfully. During this period, Li Nanheng seemed to deliberately tease her. After a while, he said he wanted to drink water, and she fed him a little every now and then. In less than an hour, more than half of the bottle of water was drunk, and Feng Ling felt that she was getting thirstier. Seeing that the car had driven near downtown Los Angeles, she didn't look at the man in the driver's seat, but looked away at the bustling streets passing by outside the window, opened the water bottle, and took a sip. Li Nanheng smiled. Have you thought about what you want to eat? Feng Ling came back to herself and remembered the problem he had mentioned before. Furthermore, she had taken the initiative to bring up the date some time ago. It seemed that a date between the two of them was nothing more than eating, drinking, playing, and shopping. Especially eating was the main theme. She looked out of the window and was a little dazzled. Anything is fine. After returning to the base, there's still a few days of intensive training time. Don't waste the time of those newbies with stomachaches. Then don't eat spicy food. Eat something light. Li Nanheng parked the car in the parking space in front of a French restaurant and took her to eat French food on the first stop of the date. It was not that they hadn't eaten before, but at that time, their relationship was not clear, and Feng Ling was still stubborn. This time, although Feng Ling still didn't speak much, at least she cooperated in many aspects and tried to find a state of being in love. Although her face often burned because of Li Nanheng's occasional words during the meal, at least the sweetness was absolutely enough. When she was almost full, Feng Ling picked up a cup of milk tea that Li Nanheng ordered for her and took a few sips. Suddenly, she heard the man say, "Don't go back to the base tonight. Come back tomorrow afternoon. Is there anything else you want to do?" Hearing the words, "Don't go back to the base tonight," Feng Ling suddenly choked, put down the cup, and coughed. Li Nanheng glanced at her with a faint smile and sat at the table in this elegant French restaurant. Although he didn't say much, his eyes clearly said, "Do you think I'll let you go back tonight?" Feng Ling. Chapter 1202. During this period, when Feng Ling went to the bathroom, she stood by the sink and the cold water washed over her hands. Thinking of her attitude at the dining table just now, she felt that she was a little spoiled. She knew why Li Nanheng took her out of the base today and what she had promised him. His meaning was so obvious just now, but she didn't speak as if she was very embarrassed. It was true that she was embarrassed, but she was the one who proposed the date and said that she owed him. She had made up her mind not to be the passive one. Li Nanheng had been good to her for so many years. She still had to change her cautious character. Feng Ling blew her hands dry, thought for a moment, and turned to walk out. When she returned to the dining table, Li Nanheng had already paid the bill. She asked, "What time is the movie?" "It will start in an hour and a half." Li Nanheng took her woolen coat and put it on her. "Put on. Don't catch a cold." When Feng Ling followed him out of the restaurant, she suddenly asked, "Is there a supermarket nearby? What do you want to buy? Don't you have to buy some food and drinks when watching a movie?" Li Nanheng glanced at her. Feng Ling usually didn't eat much, and she had eaten a lot just now. He didn't think she could eat anything in the theater later, but since she had already made a request, he certainly wouldn't refuse and drove to a large supermarket nearby. She said she wanted to buy some food and drinks, but after entering the supermarket, Li Nanheng pushed the shopping cart to the shelf selling snacks and drinks to help her choose food. However, Feng Ling turned around and searched for a long time before she found the shelf selling condoms. Standing in front of the exquisite boxes of various colors, she was dazzled. Li Nanheng chose a few kinds of food that Feng Ling could eat and was about to get a drink when he noticed that she hadn't followed him for a long time. He turned back to look for her, pushed the shopping cart around several shelves, and finally saw Feng Ling, who looked helpless but pretended to be calm, holding a box of condoms in her hand. Li Nanheng's temples twitched. He walked over, glanced at her, and then looked at the colorful boxes in front of her. Only then did he understand why she said she wanted to come to the supermarket. He smiled, took the red box out of her hand, and threw it back into the shelf. "This one doesn't suit me." It seemed that there were all kinds of brands here, such as India and Japan. She didn't understand Japanese and other countries' languages, nor could she understand what was written on it. Suddenly, her hand was empty. She turned to see Li Nanheng's meaningful expression and was instantly embarrassed. I don't know how to choose." Li Nanheng's face darkened. "I don't know how to choose." Li Nanheng's face darkened. "I don't know how to choose." The woman, who was usually majestic, now had an embarrassed expression on her face. Facing her unknown territory, she was trying her best to cooperate with him, trying her best to get closer to him. Obviously, she remembered what he had said about how many steps they had walked together, and she was trying her best to walk in his direction. For a moment, Li Nanheng suddenly regretted it. Why did he buy a movie ticket and watch a movie? He should have taken her to the hotel and doted on her for 2 days. Why did he pretend to be a gentleman? It was a waste of time to watch a movie and eat Western food. He should have directly taken her to the hotel, and from now on, he would not leave the bed until tomorrow afternoon when he returned to the base. Li Nanheng placed one hand on the shopping cart and the other on the shelf in front of him. He picked up a box of threaded peppermint-flavored ones and turned to look at her. Feng Ling stared at him with wide eyes. Obviously, he could choose anything, but her eyes still followed his hand as if trying to remember which one he chose. Seeing her expression, the man moved his hand away from the box without batting an eyelid. He then turned to look at the golden box that was half a shelf away. Feng Ling's gaze followed his hand and moved over. She looked at the beautiful Indian words that she did not recognize. After choosing for a long time, Li Nanheng couldn't bear to continue teasing her. He turned back, picked up a silver box with Japanese words, and threw it into the shopping cart. Feng Ling looked down at the one he chose in the end. It was written with something like Book 001. That's it. At this time, a salesman passed by. Li Nanheng knew that Feng Ling was shy, so he said lightly in a voice that only she could hear, "The size of the one you just took is too small. It doesn't suit me." Feng Ling was startled, and then her face was burning. It was the first time since she left the base that she blushed so much. She simply turned her eyes away from him. The man smiled as he pushed the shopping cart, stretched out his long arm, and held this little woman who was so cute that he wanted to find a place to press her on the bed right now into his arms. He bent down and kissed her on the head. "I'll buy it in the future. It doesn't matter what brand it is. Remember to choose a bigger size." Li Nanheng. Feng Ling suddenly turned her eyes, but the man directly sealed her lips. There were so many people around. Feng Ling's hair stood on end, and she looked aside from time to time. In the end, the man was in a really good mood. Before she lost her temper, he let her go and kissed the tip of her nose. "Let's go and pay the bill." Feng Ling was no longer blushing, but she was forcibly held by him to the checkout counter. Until they left the supermarket, her face was still unbelievably hot. She felt that it was not right for her to be too indulgent to a shameless man like Li Nanheng. When she didn't take the initiative, he was already unrestrained enough. If she took the initiative, he would probably swallow her alive. 15 minutes before the movie began, the two of them arrived at the cinema. After entering, they found a couple's seat. This seat was on the second floor of a luxurious cinema hall. The angle and view of the movie were very good, and it was very hidden. There were several couple seats in the back, and there were also many young couples behind. During this period, Feng Ling seemed to hear someone kissing behind her. Although she was not hungry, she quickly took out a bag of original potato chips to eat. However, after taking a few bites, the man beside her took the bag in her hand away, and then, a Hollywood blockbuster movie took about 2.5 hours. In the first half an hour, she was too embarrassed to watch because she heard the kissing sound between the young couples. And in the last 2 hours, she was almost pressed on the sofa and kissed by Li Nanheng. Originally, Li Nanheng simply wanted her to experience these processes that she had never experienced before, but this little woman's appearance in the supermarket really made him want to die. Chapter 1203. If it weren't for the fact that he was still rational and knew her temper and bottom line, he would have turned into a wolf and done something to her on the couple's seat. In the end, he only kissed and hugged her, kissing her until her cheeks were hot, her clothes and coat were wrinkled, and there was a faint mark on her neck. Compared to the impulsive young couples on the couple's seat behind her, she was not much different. When the movie ended, the two of them didn't know what the whole movie was about. When she walked out, Feng Ling refused to look back and walked all the way out of the theater. After getting into the car, she pulled down the mirror in front of her and looked at it. When she saw the mark on her neck, she immediately glanced coldly at the man in the driver's seat. Li Nanheng chuckled softly. "Sorry, I couldn't control myself." She couldn't control herself. Feng Ling could already imagine what it would be like at night. She felt that she needed to buy 2 high-collared shirts. Previously, Li Nanheng asked her what she wanted to do, but in fact, she didn't have anything to do. She felt that since she was a child, she didn't have a strong personal goal. Except for living well, she didn't have anything special. Later, what she really wanted, it was probably Li Nanheng, although she didn't admit it in the past. "It's almost evening. You got up early today. Are you tired? Go straight to the hotel." As the man spoke, he also glanced at her neck. He wanted to avoid it at night as much as possible, lest she accidentally exposed it in front of the newcomers. After all, Drill Master Feng Ling still had to maintain her dignity. "There seems to be a department store nearby. I'll go buy some things." Feng Ling didn't think that Li Nanheng, a man who could make her die in bed, would be merciful. She had already thought of a way in advance and planned to buy 2 high-collared clothes. Hearing her request, Li Nanheng drove the car over. She had a clear goal. After entering the mall, she did not wander around, but went straight to the women's clothing counters, looking for those high-neck clothes. At first, Li Nanheng did not notice what she was going to buy and only let her go in. He looked at the jewelry counters on the first floor for a while, but did not see any jewelry suitable for her. Feng Ling's temperament was cold and noble. Other than often blushing in front of him, she was usually unsmiling. However, she was his wife after all. He accidentally married her 3 years ago, but now she was a living person in front of him. Although she didn't know about this, he still had to make up for it sooner or later. The Li family often contacted several internationally renowned designers in France. It was better to customize a set of jewelry for her personality and temperament. It would be 100 times better than the one she bought. In his life, except for Feng Ling, Li Nanheng had never treated anyone better than he wanted to. However, no matter how well he treated her, he couldn't make up for her drifting on the sea when she was 1 year old and living in the jungle before she was 5 years old. Even if he stuffed all the best things in the world into her arms, he would still feel sorry for her. He didn't buy jewelry. Seeing that she was still buying clothes upstairs, the man walked to the VCA counter and stopped. Half an hour later, Feng Ling bought the clothes. She bought 2 high-collared shirts, 1 black and 1 white. It happened to be cold recently, so it wouldn't be too heavy under the uniform. After going downstairs, she saw the man standing in front of the door smoking. There were many men in the base, and there were many men who smoked. However, after so many years, it seemed that only Li Nanheng's smoking posture was so beautiful that she couldn't bear to look away. She looked for a while, looked down at the clothes and the bag in her hand, took a deep breath, and walked in the direction of the man. As soon as she walked out, Li Nanheng seemed to feel her gaze. Without waiting for her to speak, he turned back and saw her. Seeing the bag in her hand, he didn't know what it was, but it seemed to be clothes. It was rare to see her shopping for clothes. The man raised his eyebrows, held a cigarette in one hand, and put the other in the pocket of his black trench coat. When she approached, he took out a blue box and gave it to her. "What is this?" Feng Ling took it. Seeing the exquisite and beautiful box, she thought he bought some jewelry for her. She was about to say that she was now a drill master in the base and couldn't wear jewelry, which was not good for her. However, before she spoke, the man put out the cigarette in his hand and said lightly, "Open it." Feng Ling paused and opened the box. She saw that there was a watch inside, and the dial was a bright, starry sky. The color of the watch was low-key and matched well with the clothes, but at the same time, because of the bright, starry sky on the dial, it looked particularly noble and beautiful. Li Nanheng knew this better than her. Usually, some young men would wear only 1 earring or some men's jewelry in order to look cool, which would usually be confiscated and punished as a violation of the rules. Therefore, even if Feng Ling was a woman, she was still the same as everyone else. She couldn't wear jewelry casually in the base. Jewelry could be kept in the residence, but she couldn't wear it out in public. But she could wear a watch. She was surprised and looked up at him, but the man turned to look at the sky outside. "It's dark. It should snow later. Let's go. This watch, it's for you." Although Feng Ling didn't know much about various brands, she knew the VCA brand. After all, she had lived in High City. Although Jean Wan was low-key and would never wear those famous brands, she had many colleagues and daughters of famous families. Feng Ling had seen many of them. She knew that the jewelry and watches of this brand were not cheap. Although she didn't know how much this one was, she knew it would not be less than 5 million yuan. She also knew that Li Nanheng was very rich, but such an expensive thing. "Why are you standing there?" Li Nanheng was about to walk down the stairs in front of the shopping mall. Noticing that she was still standing there, he turned back and pulled her over by the wrist. When she bumped into his arms, he put his arm around her shoulder and lowered his voice to threaten her. "I haven't given you anything. This is the first time I bought you a gift. If you dare to return it, don't even think about sleeping tonight." Feng Ling. The threat of this sentence was stronger than anything else. She hurriedly put the watch and the box in her pocket and had no intention of returning it. Chapter 1204. Back in the car, Li Nanheng glanced in the rearview mirror at Feng Ling, who carefully put her hand in her pocket and smiled in satisfaction. He raised his hand to adjust the angle of the rearview mirror casually and turned to look at her. It's already dark. What do you want to eat tonight? Do you want to eat first and then go back to the hotel? Feng Ling came back to herself. Oh, whatever. Li Nanheng reached over and rubbed her soft hair. What are you waiting for? Come back to yourself. Feng Ling had come back to herself, but she was still a little stunned by the gift that suddenly fell from the sky in her pocket. She had never received any gifts since she was a child. In the base, everyone could come out to have fun on holidays or birthdays, but it was strictly forbidden to give each other birthday gifts, so the men in the base had long been used to it. They didn't give her anything and just drank whenever they wanted. In the past few years, Feng Ling didn't get too close to anyone. It seemed that Jinwan had given her some small things, but she didn't call them gifts and just gave them to her naturally. So this was really her first time. Her first time was so precious. Li Nanheng, the boss of 11 Base, had already made several exceptions for her. She gently stroked the cold dial in her pocket with her hand. When a man stopped the car at a red light and turned to look at her again, she remembered what he had just asked and said, "I ate a lot at noon and am not hungry yet. It's okay if I don't eat tonight. It's not 5 o'clock yet. I'll still be hungry at night." Then, Feng Ling thought for a while. Although I only lived in China for a few months, I still have a deep impression of some of the food there, especially hot pot. Can I eat hot pot? Li Nanheng looked at her and then at the time. He didn't answer immediately, but suddenly turned the car to a roundabout ahead and quickly drove to the road on the left, until he stopped in front of a large supermarket. He motioned for her to get out of the car and said, "This is Los Angeles, after all. If you want to eat authentic hot pot in the United States, you have to ask around, and the food you find may not be to your taste. Let's go buy some meat rolls, vegetables, and hot pot ingredients and cook hot pot by ourselves after dinner." Feng Ling didn't know that hot pot could be cooked by herself and immediately nodded happily. Okay. Seeing her instantly agree, Li Nanheng didn't feel guilty at all for deceiving the little girl. There was a very famous hot pot restaurant in Los Angeles nearby. It was opened by a Chinese couple, but the queue was very long. It would take at least 3 to 4 hours to get back to the hotel. Now that the sky was already dark, he didn't want to waste a single moment outside. It would be better to cook hot pot for her in the hotel room and hold the little woman in his arms when she was satisfied. Anyway, when she was full, he could start to feed himself. These 3 to 4 hours were so precious that he could only waste it on the bed and not on other places. If she really wanted to eat, he wouldn't mind bringing her out tomorrow afternoon to make it up to her. This time, the goal of buying things in the supermarket was clearer. In half an hour, she bought all the things and returned to the car. Feng Ling was really not a foodie in the past, but after living in China for a while, she found that she really missed a lot of food in China. Now when she thought of the hot pot to eat later in the car, she couldn't wait to go to the hotel immediately. When they finally arrived at the hotel, Feng Ling forgot all the things that would happen in the hotel tonight. She didn't care about being embarrassed and took the initiative to get out of the car to help him carry the things. She carried various vegetables and meat rolls in her hands, and her face was full of expectation. Although Li Nanheng couldn't wait anymore, he didn't want to let her down. After returning to the room, he asked the hotel staff to bring up the induction cooker and the newly bought pot. In the end, he still helped her cook the hot pot. There was no chili in the hot pot. It was not Sichuan style, but the kind of hot pot with stock. However, because it was too hot, Feng Ling's cheeks were still red and there was sweat on her forehead. She used her hand to fan her red lips as she ate. Seeing that her usually pale lips were red, Li Nanheng became more and more absent-minded. In the end, he simply left her sitting here to eat alone and got up to go to the bathroom. "Where are you going?" Feng Ling saw him get up and subconsciously asked. At the same time, she stuffed a piece of tofu into her mouth. "Take a shower. You eat first." Feng Ling nodded again. It wasn't until the sound of water came from the bathroom that Feng Ling's chopsticks paused. She suddenly remembered that she still had a tough battle to fight tonight. However, listening to the sound of water in the bathroom, the burning feeling on her face instantly became even hotter. She quickly put down her chopsticks and sat on the chair to think for a long time. She felt that her head and body were covered in sweat, but no matter how big this hotel suite was, there was only one bathroom. She was definitely too embarrassed to go in and take a shower with Lee Nanhung. Furthermore, she was already full and couldn't eat anymore. So she just sat here and listened to the sound of water in the bathroom for a while, feeling a little uncomfortable. When Lee Nanhung came out of the bathroom, the man walked out of the bathroom wearing a dark blue bathrobe. His thin and cool short hair was still dripping with water. The water rolled down from the man's chin and submerged into the loose bathrobe. He was about to come over to light a cigarette when he saw that the induction cooker in front of Feng Ling seemed to have been turned off for a long time. Feng Ling, who had been eating earlier, was sitting there thinking about something. The man's good-looking brows moved. "I'm not eating anymore, and I'm full." When Feng Ling spoke, she was too embarrassed to look at him, even though she knew he was wearing a bathrobe. "All right, it's not easy to digest if you eat too much at night. If you still want to eat, I'll find time to take you out to eat tomorrow." The man picked up the cigarette box and put it down again, looking deeply at her. Even though the man didn't say anything or do anything, Feng Ling couldn't resist his burning gaze and quickly stood up. "I'm going to take a shower too." With that, without waiting for Lee Nanhung to speak, she quickly entered the bathroom and closed the door. Hearing the sound of her locking the bathroom door, Lee Nanhung curved his lips and raised his hand to casually tug at his still dripping hair. When he heard the sound of water coming from inside, he smiled. Chapter 1205. The sound of water continued in the bathroom. In fact, there was a bathtub next to it, but Feng Ling didn't want to soak in it. When she was washing her hair, she inexplicably thought of what Lee Nanhing said in the supermarket today when he said that the size of the box of condoms she chose was not suitable for him. Although she wanted to take the initiative today, she still felt a little sad when she thought of the painful memories from the previous 2 times. Lee Nanhung was not a gentleman at all. Not everyone could enjoy so much warmth and patience to her. She knew this very well. What she also knew was that this man could torment her half to death, even when she was seriously ill. Last time in T-City, she didn't even have a chance to sleep. This man was purely ferocious in bed, and the more she cried and begged for mercy, the fiercer and fiercer he became. It seemed that he wouldn't give in to her and dote on her as much as he usually did. Feng Ling even wondered if she should buy a life-prolonging pill in advance. No matter how she thought about it, she still took a bath. She suddenly remembered that when she left the base, she didn't think so much and didn't bring any change of clothes. She didn't bring the clothes she bought in the mall today. She looked at the clothes that had just been changed with the smell of hot pot, and then at the other white bathrobe and bath towel hanging next to it in the bathroom. She blushed and was too embarrassed to go out with the bath towel wrapped around her. Instead, she first wrapped the bath towel and then took the bathrobe to put it on. In this way, she was tightly dressed inside and outside and had to push the door open to go out. Because she had taken a bath for too long, the bathroom was still a little hot, but outside the bathroom, it was clean and bright. The man's tall and straight figure was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window by the dining table, where she had just eaten hot pot. The lights outside the window were bright, and it had even begun to snow. Lee Nanhung was looking out of the window and turned back when he heard the sound. The moment their eyes met, Feng Ling suddenly didn't know how to speak. She opened her mouth and stammered, I'm done." The little woman's cheeks were red, and her short hair was wet and hung on her cheeks. When he looked at her, she seemed to be a little uncomfortable and raised her hand to touch her own hair, then turned to look in the direction of the bathroom, saying, "My clothes are still in there. I'll go get them." "No, call the hotel staff to bring them over for dry cleaning." The man stopped her. "Come here." Feng Ling's footsteps faltered, and she turned to look at him thoughtfully. "Come here," he repeated in a slower voice. Feng Ling looked at the man and the falling snow outside the window behind him and hesitated for a moment before she walked over. She had just taken 2 steps when the man raised his eyebrows coldly. "Am I a terrorist with dozens of explosives tied to my body, or what? What are you afraid of?" Feng Ling said in her heart. If you were a terrorist with dozens of explosives tied to your body, I wouldn't be afraid of you, but his particularly patient and gentle tone. However, she still braced herself and walked over. As soon as she walked to the window, the man hugged her and touched the heavy equipment on her body. He lowered his head and saw that she was wearing a bathrobe and towel. He immediately laughed and stroked her wet head. It's snowing quite heavily. I don't think we can drive back to the base tomorrow morning. You've been busy accompanying the people of the youth training team from morning to night. It's rare for you to take this opportunity to sleep in. I don't seem to have the habit of sleeping in. Feng Ling looked away from the man's face stiffly and did not look at him. At this moment, the man's voice whispered into her ear and he hugged her tightly from behind. That'll have to wait until you can get up tomorrow morning. Feng Ling did not want to speak. She stared at the snow outside and thought for a moment, but she suddenly felt a warmth on her neck. The man's kiss had already fallen. She felt uncomfortable and stiff, not knowing what to do. Her mind kept replaying the previous two experiences, but she found that the first time on the snow mountain, she was completely stunned. She was so passive that she almost forgot the process and only remembered that it was very painful. As for the second time, at that time, she was also at a loss. Li Nanheng drove her the whole time. She remembered that she was also in terrible pain at that time. Later, she was so tired that she even cried under him. Her head was dizzy, and she didn't remember what to do. Right now, she stood there with her neck shrunk. She subconsciously wanted to hide, but she didn't want to resist. The man's kiss moved from her neck to her ear. His originally steady breathing gradually became hot and no longer steady. His slightly heavy breathing seemed to explode in Feng Ling's ears, causing her eardrums to tremble. He hugged her tightly and was not in a hurry to take off her bathrobe. He only focused on kissing her. For Li Nanheng, although he really wanted to throw her on the bed and get to the point, it was already a miracle that a man could hold on for so long in front of the woman he liked. There was no need for foreplay. But after all, he knew that Feng Ling's previous two experiences were almost forced. Right now, even if he forced himself to endure, he had to let her experience how he loved her well and give her enough time to prepare. The man held her and pressed her against the floor-to-ceiling window. In an instant, in front of her was a slightly cold window. She could still see the falling snow outside, but behind her was the man's hot and firm chest under his slightly open bathrobe. She was stimulated by this feeling of ice and fire, and all the hair on her body stood on end. She didn't know where she kicked, but she seemed to have kicked the switch of the floor lamp by the side. In an instant, the lights in front of the window dimmed, and the lights behind them also dimmed. The neon lights and snow outside the window were even brighter, and the two people in front of the window were hidden in a charming darkness. In the darkness, Li Nanheng hugged her and kissed her nonstop. He kissed very attentively, and gradually, her nervousness gradually disappeared. When the man turned her body around, she didn't notice when the bathrobe slipped off her shoulders. However, it only slipped halfway, and the bathrobe was stuck on her arms. It was as though her arms were tied behind her back, and she couldn't move. She moved, and the man took the opportunity to press her against the window harder and kiss her deeper. There was the sound of water intertwining in the air, causing Feng Ling's entire body to burn up. Chapter 1206. The room was very quiet. The falling snow outside did not disturb the silence. They could hear each other's breathing, heartbeat, and the touch of lips. The man held her face and kissed her. When he changed the angle, there was still a slight moist sound. Feng Ling tried very hard to breathe as usual, but it was useless. Under Li Nanheng's kiss and touch, her breathing gradually became more and more disordered. She was considered very tall among women, but Li Nanheng was able to easily cover her. His figure was strong and tall. The man held her in his warm embrace, demanding more. Feng Ling was completely driven by him, but this time he was obviously much more patient than that night in T-City. At that time, he had drunk something dirty and his reason had been excluded. Now he was obviously trying to hold on to his reason. But this kiss was still gentle and lingering at the beginning, but became deeper and deeper. He pried open her lips and teeth, rubbing and entangling, like a thirsty man drinking poison to quench his thirst, or like a man burning with fire, trying to extinguish the fire on his body. But Fong Ling's gradually tentative response was not much cool water that could extinguish the fire, but oil poured on the fire, burning endlessly, and smoke rose everywhere. She didn't know when her bathrobe completely fell to the ground. In the darkness, only the snow outside the window reflected a little bit of light, but it was not clear, and the sound of the man's Adam's apple moving was mixed in the air. Perhaps the bath towel wrapped around Fong Ling was too loose, or the man hurriedly undid his bathrobe and took her bath towel down with him. In this world in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, there was gradually an uncontrollable soft moan, but more of it was the man's excited gasp when he looked at her. Fong Ling didn't even notice when she was naked. Before she could adapt to the coolness of the window, she felt Li Nanheng's kiss gradually moving down her neck, then her collarbone, and then down. Fong Ling let out a low gasp and leaned her neck back, but she could only lean against the window. She felt ashamed and excited by this wet and hot kiss. She blushed. Fortunately, it was very dark around, so the man couldn't see the burning color on her face, but she still carefully put her hand on the window behind her. Are we going to do it here? What? The man looked up vaguely and met Fong Ling's wet eyes. Li Nanheng originally wanted to hear Fong Ling's words clearly and wait for her to repeat it again. However, when he raised his head and glanced at her, the man who thought he could still hold on felt his scalp go numb. The blood in his head almost gushed out, and he could no longer suppress the fierce desire in his body. He kissed her, rubbed her, and hugged and kissed her for a long time. Panting, he slightly released her lips, but reluctantly lowered his head to kiss her again. He asked hoarsely, "What did you say just now?" I said, "Are you going to do it here? Don't you want to go to bed?" Fong Ling's heart was beating very fast. She didn't know how to find her breath in such a fierce kiss. After being kissed for a long time, she was already a little dizzy, and her voice was also hoarse. Here by the window, Li Nanheng paused. God knew where he borrowed his reason to remember that she was thin-skinned. Although he not only wanted to do it in front of the window, but also on the sofa, the table, the kitchen, the bathroom, and everywhere else, in order to let her have a more peaceful experience, he patiently carried her from the floor-to-ceiling window, turned, and walked straight into the soft big bed in the bedroom. The last bit of light outside the window gradually moved away, and the direction of the bed was even darker. Some excitement that had been bred in his mind and body for a long time finally began to jump out of the cage. At this moment, the blood all over Li Nanheng's body was boiling hot. This was Fong Ling, his Fong Ling, the big river crab of life. Please go to Weibo. He murmured hoarsely in her ear, "Don't be afraid. I'm not afraid. Leave it to me. Be good. It'll be fine. It won't hurt anymore." The scene of that night in the snow mountain flashed in Fong Ling's mind. The man's strong and even somewhat hard muscles, her own weak legs, the ice and snow outside the Rogers Pass, and the warmth in the tent. It was a dream that she didn't dare to recall even once. Suddenly, it gradually became clear in her mind. She remembered that at that time, even if Li Nanheng's fever was severe, even if he was unconscious, he was calling her name at that time. Even if he was unconscious at that time, the person he wanted was always her. This was too exciting. Fong Ling's consciousness was hazy. She looked at the man on top of her and whispered something. The man suddenly bent down and sealed her lips hard. She had never seen Li Nanheng like this, even that night in T-City. When he couldn't find his reason, he didn't look like this. His eyes were red and seemed to be beastly, but he still stared at her passionately. Outside the window, it was snowing heavily, and the air in the room was boiling hot. The man's sweat dripped down like magma. There was a gap in the middle of the curtains that was not closed too tightly. The light of the early morning outside shone in through the gap and was cast on the feet of the two people at the end of the bed. One of the slender, white legs and the pair of small feet were sandwiched between the other pair of slender, strong, and thin legs. Under the light, the skin seemed to be exuding white light. Fong Ling had just been carried into the bathroom to wash. She didn't wear any clothes and was stuffed into the quilt by the man. who forced her to sleep in his arms. She was already in a daze just now. She couldn't remember whether she was crying or shouting. At this moment, she was in a daze and wanted to fall asleep quickly. However, she could still feel the man holding her tightly in his arms. He pressed against her back and gently patted her waist as though he was comforting her from overexertion just now. She felt that although the man was holding her from behind and had helped her wash, he was ready to let her sleep. However, such a close posture still made Feng Ling drowsily feel the change in his unsatisfied part. She closed her eyes lazily. When the man held her more tightly in his arms, he gradually moved down, kissed her ear and neck, and begged for mercy. "Don't let me go." The man was in a good mood. Hearing her words, he smiled and kissed her shoulder, turned her over, and kissed her. Feng Ling frowned and tried to push him away but couldn't. She had to open her eyes and look at him. He kissed her on the lips shamelessly and said vaguely, "All right, I'll listen to you. I won't let you go." Feng Ling, there was still a gap between her and the first place in the monthly votes, but it was already very good. Ching still fulfilled her promise. On Weibo, today is the last day of the month. Continue to work hard next month. Dear friends, you must give me the monthly votes today and tomorrow's first. In the future, I'll try to find time to make up for the meet in T-City. Thank you for your support. Chapter 12:07. He saw that she was so weak that she couldn't even lift her arms. They hung by her sides, and her whole body was soft. He kissed her forehead and asked hoarsely, "Did it still hurt last night?" "It shouldn't hurt. At most, your throat will hurt." The man's heavy breath was by her ear, and his voice seemed to be moist. "You screamed so hard that you didn't sleep last night. It's all thanks to you." Feng Ling didn't know what kind of person she was usually. Under his body, the corners of her eyes were red, and she was trembling and panting. Sometimes she frowned, and sometimes she couldn't help making long or high sounds that she tried hard to suppress. He couldn't control her like this. She closed her eyes and didn't move, but her ears were burning because of his words. Seeing that she couldn't continue to sleep, the man chuckled and said by her ear, "I'll let you go just now because you cried too hard, but it doesn't mean that I'm really done." Hearing this, Feng Ling abruptly opened her eyes and stared blankly at the man who was still not satisfied. She subconsciously tried to move away from his arms and tried to move forward, but the man gently hugged her and pressed her into his arms, unable to move. At the same time, Li Nanheng pulled her hand down. "You're still in this state after I helped you take a bath. It's all your fault." Feng Ling was angry. He had tortured her for the whole night, but he was still not satisfied. She grabbed the pillow under her head and was about to hit him. "You beast. I want to sleep. If you don't let me sleep, I'll shoot you." The man held her hand tightly and pressed it against his. Feng Ling's lips were blocked in time. For a moment, she couldn't say a word and only felt that the top of her head was steaming. "I can't help it. I've held it in for too long. How many years has it been?" The man continued to kiss her deeply through the gap between the curtains. He continued to kiss her neck, which was already filled with ambiguous red marks. He was almost intoxicated. After kissing for a while, even Feng Ling, who was so tired that she was about to collapse, could not restrain herself. This entire night, she had been constantly pressed by this man, and her entire body was still in a sensitive state. Although she was tired, she could not bear the slightest provocation, and the passion between the bed became stronger. Li Nanheng heard Feng Ling say something between their lips. Her voice was low, hoarse, tired, and a little embarrassed, but it was still the voice that tempted him uncontrollably in bed. "How many times do you want to do it before you're satisfied? The sky is already bright." Her voice was almost trembling at the end. Because of the man's movements under the blanket, her body trembled violently, and she was drowned in shame once again. At noon, Li Nanheng's cell phone kept ringing. Li Nanheng frowned impatiently. 2 seconds later, Feng Ling, who was about to get up, suddenly opened her eyes, sat up, and turned the phone to silent. She glanced at the caller ID, did not answer it, and threw the phone back to the bed. Feng Ling sank into the soft, and fluffy quilt. She was usually alert, but this time she was not woken up by the ringing of the bell and was still sleeping soundly under the quilt. Lee Nanhung didn't remember how many times they did it last night. He only saw a few used condoms in the indoor trash can not far away, and even the 3 boxes of Okamoto 001 had been used up. He also opened another spare box in another hotel bathroom. This morning, he rubbed her under the quilt for a while and did it twice. In the end, Fong Ling almost fainted and could not even scream, but her cheeks were still so red that he could not find his reason. There was no way he could be merciful. Li Nanheng leaned against the headboard and touched Fong Ling's forehead. He didn't remember where he had heard that some women were particularly fragile. If they suddenly experienced too much passion, it might even cause them to have a fever and other symptoms of overwork. Of course, this kind of situation was rare, but he was very clear about what he had done to her last night, so he was more or less worried about her body. But under his palm, her body temperature was not hot, but very warm. At this time, he couldn't help but think of the night on the snow mountain. It was her first time, and she lay in bed for 3 days. Would she really be seriously ill at that time? She could endure it now, but she was in such a deep sleep that she wouldn't be able to hear or feel anything if the sky didn't fall on her. Seeing that her shoulder was accidentally exposed by the edge of the quilt because of Wei Wei's movements in her dream, Li Nanheng lifted the quilt for her. After all, the weather was cold. There was air conditioning in the hotel room, but the air was still a little cold. Fearing that she would catch a cold or wake up from the cold, Li Nanheng lifted the quilt for her. Fong Ling instinctively hugged the quilt in her sleep, and her face was red. Before dawn, he had carried her into the bathroom to take a shower, but after the 2 times, he was afraid that if he helped her take a shower again, he would start a fire again. He was afraid that he would do it again, so he didn't take her to clean up again. Fortunately, he used condoms, so it was not too messy, but he was still worried, in case Fong Ling woke up and lost her temper with him. The man gently reached into the quilt, touched her waist, and then continued to slide down to make sure that she was no longer sweating in the morning. He also confirmed that her body was very clean and her skin was smooth, in line with her usual state of love for cleanliness. However, after touching for a while, he pinched her slender waist hard, lowered his eyes to look at Fong Ling, who was almost unconscious, and kissed the tip of her nose. At this time, the phone rang again, but it was the hotel landline beside the bed, not his cell phone. Li Nanheng picked it up, and the hotel staff's polite and respectful voice came from the inside. The reason was that the hotel had prepared lunch. Because they didn't have breakfast in the morning, they reminded them to eat lunch in time, lest they starved. Li Nanheng ordered lunch on the phone and asked them to send it over. He still remembered that Fong Ling wanted to eat hot pot. Last night, he cooked to hear himself because he was in a hurry. Today, he had to find an opportunity to let her have a good bite of the most authentic local hot pot in Los Angeles, so he didn't order much for lunch in the hotel. Most of the food was easy to digest, in case her stomach felt uncomfortable after she woke up. Half an hour later, the phone call came again. It was the room service who pushed the dining cart to the door. Li Nanheng got up and went out to pick up the bathrobe that was scattered on the ground last night, put it on, and went to open the door. The hotel staff hurriedly prepared the lunch after ordering it, and it was still hot. 4M. Chapter 1208. Fong Ling was really tired. She had used up too much energy and didn't wake up until 1 p.m. The curtains in the room, which originally let in a trace of light, were tightly closed. They were all floor-to-ceiling windows, which showed how big the curtains were. She got up from the bed. Because the curtains were closed, everything was dark except for the wall lamp in front of the bed. She found her phone by the bed and picked it up to take a look. It was already so late. In the darkness, the phone screen was too dazzling. Fong Ling narrowed her eyes. The scene of her being tormented by the man on this bed made her brain stiff for a long time. In fact, Li Nanheng was not really so unreasonable. At least at the beginning, he would pay attention to whether she was comfortable or not and would ask her gently from time to time if it hurt. Although she couldn't answer at that time, at least at the beginning, he was much gentler than later. How did it gradually get out of control? It seemed that she said something to him, while crying under him. She even said that sentence in a trembling voice because of the fullness in her heart and the satisfaction in her body. After that almost voluntary confession, this man seemed to have gone crazy and adjusted her countless positions on the bed. Later, for a few hours, she vaguely remembered she was tossed around so much that she couldn't close her legs. She remembered that the man had said a lot of words that made her blush when she was in a daze. At that time, she was stuttering and couldn't think normally. Basically, she said whatever he wanted her to say. She didn't know what he wanted her to say. When she fell asleep again in the morning, she felt that Lee Nanhung seemed to want to carry her to take a shower again, but she didn't know why he gave up in the end and just held her here to sleep. The bathrobe that slipped to the ground last night was placed by the bed, or maybe it was a new bathrobe that Lee Nanhung asked the room service staff for. She only glanced at it and did not put on. Instead, she picked up another piece of clothing next to her. It was the shirt that Lee Nanhung had worn yesterday. The shirt seemed to have the faint, refreshing, and pleasant smell of Lee Nanhung's body. Before she got off the bed, her phone suddenly rang. She looked down and saw that it was a message from Lee Nanhung. Lee Nanhung woke up. Feng Ling was startled. There was no camera in this room, and Lee Nanhung was not by her side. How did he know that she was awake? Did he send the message by coincidence and wait for her to wake up? Or did he really guess that she was awake? Then, the man's message came again. If you don't want to get up, go back to sleep. There's no rush. The roads are blocked by heavy snow, and the suburban roads are too thick to pass through. I don't think I can go back to the base today. I will call the Transportation Bureau and ask them to clear the road before tomorrow morning. Seeing the words heavy snow blocked road, Feng Ling hurriedly got up and got off the bed. However, as soon as she got off the bed, her feet suddenly softened, and she stumbled back onto the bed. After resting for a long time, she was finally able to get up. She walked to the window and pulled the curtains open. The moment she opened the curtains, she was almost blinded by the bright light. She narrowed her eyes and saw the plain, white snow outside. Even though this was a bustling city street, she could still see the places on the buildings that couldn't be cleared by the snowplows. The snow on the main road in the city had long been cleared. On the ground, black and white patches of asphalt could be seen, and the snow was piled up on both sides of the road. Looking at the situation, it was indeed possible that the suburbs hadn't been cleared yet. After all, 11 Base couldn't be located in the city, but in the suburbs a little further away from downtown Los Angeles. No one would use that road except for the people of the base, so if it didn't affect the normal progress of the base's mission, it was understandable that these people didn't rush to clear this road first. Unless there was an important mission, 11 Base, a militarized place, would definitely put the people first. They could wait for the snow to be cleared in other places first. Feng Ling thought that it shouldn't be too far from here. If she got up early tomorrow and drove back early, she could return to the base before the morning training. The phone thrown on the bed vibrated again. She turned to pick it up. This time, it was the weather forecast. It said that there would be heavy snow this afternoon. After reading it, she glanced at the message sent by Lee Nanhung and replied, "I'm awake." After about 2 or 3 minutes, the other side replied, "It will probably take a while to go back. If you are tired, continue to sleep. If you're not sleepy, get up and take a shower. I didn't help you bathe later. You should not be too comfortable now." How could it not be comfortable? Lee Nanhung was a man who was obsessed with cleanliness. Except for last night, when he was crazy, he at least carefully washed her inside and outside in the morning. When he carried her to take a shower, Feng Ling almost went crazy. Later, he continued to do it on the bed twice, but at least in the morning, Lee Nanhung was not as crazy as last night. So she was very clean. There was no trace at all. But in the daytime, she was discussing with a man about whether she was clean or not, and whether she was tired or not. Feng Ling didn't look at his words directly, but still replied with a "in." No matter how clean she was, she still had to take a shower. Last night, she could still take a shower standing, but now she only had the strength to sit in the bathtub. She was relaxing in the bathtub full of hot water when Lee Nanhung sent a message. After a while, he saw that the lunch he asked the hotel to deliver at noon was still on the table. "It should be cold now. If you're not hungry, you don't have to eat it. Wait for me." I see that you don't have the strength to go out, so I promise to let you have a good hot pot meal. I will bring back all the ingredients from the hot pot city. You don't have to come out in the afternoon. Have a good rest and wait for me." She was just thinking that she was tired and hungry. No matter how goodly Nanheng's physical strength was, he was the one who had been working up there. Wasn't he tired or sleepy? What urgent matter could make him leave when the road was blocked by the heavy snow? She didn't expect that he went to buy various things for her to cook hot pot again. She smiled and replied with okay. After replying, she put down the phone and continued to sit in the bathtub with half-closed eyes. When she was about to fall asleep comfortably, she heard the phone vibrate in her ear. She half opened her eyes and picked up the phone in a daze, only to see a message from a strange number. "Come to the underground parking lot of the hotel. 4M." Chapter 1209. Seeing that it was a message from an unknown number, Feng Ling propped up her wet head with one hand and looked at the words, feeling a little puzzled and surprised. She wondered who this person was. She was surprised that this person seemed to know that she was in this hotel. Did he follow them, or was he from the hotel? Just when she was thinking about whether to ask Li Nanheng, that person sent another message. "It's me. Can't you guess who I am? Come down. I have something for you." Feng Ling held the phone and pondered for a while. She thought it might be a friend for Boston. She remembered that many people had said that they would come to Los Angeles to find her recently. Although it was just a verbal agreement, she had never had a chance to come. She saw that this number belonged to Los Angeles and guessed that it might be a friend from Los Angeles who changed his phone number after coming here. Who could it be? Although she felt that there was something wrong with this way of greeting, Feng Ling had a certain level of martial arts. It was impossible for ordinary people to do anything to her, so she had nothing to worry about. She got up from the bathtub and went out to see a new set of clothes on the sofa. Li Nanheng must have asked the hotel staff to send it over. After all, she couldn't wear yesterday's clothes anymore. She put on her clothes and went downstairs. She took the elevator to the underground parking lot of the hotel. Of course, she had a gun in her pocket. She would never let her guard down. In the end, after she appeared in the underground parking lot, she didn't see anyone there. There were many cars parked around, and she couldn't see which cars were occupied and which ones weren't. She glanced at the message on her phone again. After not seeing anyone for so long, she became even more vigilant. Just as she was about to turn to leave, a figure suddenly jumped out from a corner. The figure carried a strong smell of alcohol. At the moment he pounced on her, Feng Ling instinctively turned back and punched him, but the other party suddenly bent down and hugged her leg. Wife, don't leave me a wife." "I know I was wrong." Suddenly being hugged by someone, Feng Ling immediately lowered her head in shock, only to see that it was a man in his 40s who was almost bald on his head who was hugging her and crying. Even though she was wearing pants that were separated by the material of her pants, being suddenly hugged like this and calling her wife, she still felt disgusted and had goosebumps all over her body. She shouted angrily, "Who are you? Let go. Honey, I know I was wrong. Honey, I won't go out and have fun anymore. Please come home, honey." Usually, when Li Nanheng teased her, he would call her little wife. Although Feng Ling was unhappy, she had never been unhappy in her heart. Now that a strange drunkard suddenly called her his wife, Feng Ling felt extremely disgusted. Her whole body was filled with resistance. She didn't have time to think about why there were so many Chinese people in Los Angeles, and why the drunkard she met in the underground parking lot also called her in Chinese. Vaguely, it seemed that something had been arranged. She just kept kicking the man in disgust. However, just as she was about to turn around and leave, the man staggered to his feet and continued to hug her leg tightly. Wifey, don't go. Get lost." Feng Ling was furious. She turned around and kicked him away again. If it weren't for the fact that she still had a trace of rationality left in her, which warned her not to kill people casually outside the base except for carrying out missions, she would bring trouble to the base. She forcibly suppressed this disgusting anger and picked up her phone to check what was wrong with the text message just now. For some reason, she didn't see any acquaintances, but a drunkard suddenly ran out. To her surprise, the drunkard suddenly shouted, "Ah, and temporarily attracted her attention. Feng Ling looked back and saw that he staggered to his feet on the ground and then ran to her with a grin while calling her wife. Feng Ling avoided him with disgust. Seeing that there were too many cars here, she simply walked to the empty space in front, holding the phone in her hand, and gradually became more suspicious and vigilant in her heart. "Honey, I really didn't mean to." The drunkard was still standing between the cars and crying, which made her heart upset. At this moment, Feng Ling suddenly heard the sound of a car coming in from the parking lot on the left. She turned around and saw that it was Li Nanheng's black Hummer. She recognized the license plate number of the car. Seeing that he was back, she was slightly relieved because of the text message just now and quickly took a few steps to greet him. Suddenly, behind her, the right side of the parking lot lit up with a strong light. Feng Ling suddenly felt that the black Hummer in front of her suddenly turned on a pair of headlights at the same time, as if to remind her of something. She turned around and saw that the light behind her was particularly dazzling. A shabby silver SUV rushed toward her at a speed dozens of times faster than the standard speed in the parking lot. Feng Ling was still annoyed by the drunkard and paused for a moment while holding the phone in her hand. When she reacted and was about to quickly jump away, she suddenly heard Li Nanheng's voice in the black Hummer. "Back!" She instinctively dodged in the direction he said, but after all, it was still too late. The car rushing toward her had already approached her. At this critical moment, two strong lights crossed each other, and then there was a loud bang. Feng Ling fell heavily to the ground. Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned to look at the two cars that collided with each other. The collision was too serious. Although the SUV was very old, it was very strong and had obviously been reinforced. Even the front of Li Nanheng's car was deformed. Ignoring the pain in her knees, she immediately turned over and was about to go to the Hummer to take a look. However, as soon as she rushed over, she saw that in the window of the black Hummer, Li Nanheng stretched out his arm from the airbag that had just been shaken out and stabbed a few times with a dagger he carried with him. He decisively cut open the obstructing airbags and pierced all the airbags. Then he smoothly reversed the car, put it in gear, and the wheels quickly spun. He rushed forward again, and with a bang, he hit the SUV in front of him again, pushing it back by a meter. Bang! The headlights of the two cars had been completely destroyed. Bang! The front of the car was completely destroyed. Bang! The windshield was also smashed into pieces. The people in the SUV obviously did not have such good physical fitness as Li Nanheng. Under such a violent impact, they had no strength to do anything. They were desperately stuck between the steering wheel and the seat in the car and had no way to escape. Chapter 12:10. Feng Ling knew that she should have only been 0.01 seconds away from death, but she didn't know how anxious and dangerous that scene was in Li Nanheng's eyes. She only saw Li Nanheng crazily hit the car. He didn't even have an airbag in his car. She shouted at him, "Stop, Li Nanheng, stop!" After a few more hits, Li Nanheng hit the two SUVs until they were concave in the middle and protruding on both sides. Even if it was reinforced, it was still like a grandchild in front of Li Nanheng's car, especially when Li Nanheng used the strongest part of the car to hit it. Even though it looked like he was crazy, in fact, every hit was accurate and hard. The black Hummer finally stopped. Feng Ling rushed to the car door, only to see Li Nanheng walk out of the severely deformed car door. He grabbed Feng Ling, panting, and pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly. "Li Nanheng, are you crazy?" Feng Ling raised her hand and clutched the clothes on his waist tightly. Thinking of the scene just now, her eyes turned red. "The airbag in your car is gone. You'll be injured. Do you think you're made of iron?" Li Nanheng hugged her tightly, as if to make sure she was still in his arms. A moment later, the man's heavy breathing gradually calmed down. He kissed her gently on the side of her neck. "Why didn't you rest in the room? Why did you suddenly run out? You're usually so vigilant. What happened just now?" Feng Ling was about to talk about the text message when she remembered the drunkard just now. She turned her eyes abruptly, only to see that the drunkard was quietly moving out from behind a row of cars in front of them. She suddenly touched the blood on the back of Li Nanheng's hand. She guessed that he had been injured when he tried to pull out his hand from under the airbag and cut the airbag with a dagger. She held her breath, suddenly pulled out a gun from her waist, and shot the drunkard's slowly moving leg. If it weren't for the rule that the base couldn't kill indiscriminately outside except for missions, and the fact that she needed to keep the other party alive to obtain evidence, she really wanted to shoot the drunkard's head. He was obviously in cahoots with the half-dead man in the car. The drunkard was shot in the ankle. He screamed in pain and fell to the ground. He dragged his injured ankle and struggled to crawl out. Feng Ling decisively and quickly fired another shot, hitting the fixed screw under the road sign in Area AB in the parking lot in front of him. The road sign suddenly tilted and fell to the ground. A large blue square blocked the drunkard's way forward. She then turned to look at the SUV and saw an unfamiliar middle-aged man sitting in the driver's seat. However, the other party's head was already bleeding. She didn't know if he was dead or if he still had one last breath left. Just now, Li Nanheng clearly wanted to kill him. I'll tell you when we get back. Feng Ling said as she retracted her gaze, looked down at Li Nanheng's hands that were still dripping with blood, and then looked up and down at him. Where are you injured? Seeing that the man's face was paler than usual, it was obvious that the impact just now had injured him quite badly. I'm fine, the man said hoarsely and clenched her hand. Obviously, no matter how badly he was injured, it was more important than her unscathed. There's a large local hospital in Los Angeles nearby. After calling the emergency number and calling the police and doctors arrived immediately. This kind of obviously illegal murder didn't need 11 base to deal with it privately. The surveillance cameras in the underground parking lot could clearly restore what happened at the scene, and the police could directly investigate the truth of the whole matter. When a man in the SUV was carried out, he was covered with blood and didn't move at all like a dead man. Thinking of the scene where Li Nanheng's eyes were bloodshot and his face cold again and again, she clenched his wrist tightly, but the man held her hand in his palm. Even the drunkard who fell to the ground was taken away by the police. Due to her and Li Nanheng's identity and relationship in 11 base, although they were needed to go with the investigation, seeing that Li Nanheng was injured and Feng Ling's attitude was obviously cold and silent, she was unwilling to go with them for the time being, so she could only say that she would call them when needed. After getting their consent, she took the two people away. The doctor followed them up and entered the hotel room. After a brief examination, he came to a conclusion. In addition to the more than 10 centimeters long wound on Li Nanheng's arm by the dagger, there were also some small wounds on his forehead and the back of his hand by the glass. At that time, the impact was too strong. The car window had been broken, and the broken glass jumped into his flesh. The two cars collided several times in succession with too much force, and Li Nanheng experienced several strong impacts like a car accident at the same time. No matter how strong his physical fitness was, he was still immortal. He had a slight concussion, but it was not particularly serious. He would be fine after a few days of rest. The doctor carefully took out the glass fragments that jumped into his flesh, applied medicine to the obvious wounds, and left some gauze and anti-inflammatory drugs. After making sure that Li Nanheng was fine, he left. After the doctor left, Feng Ling turned to wash the blood-stained towel. After washing it white, she took it out and continued to help Li Nanheng wipe his face. When she wiped his face, she carefully avoided the small wound on his forehead. She looked at the places on his body that were not serious but could be considered as external wounds. Then she thought of the scene where he crashed into the car without any regard for his life. Her heart instantly ached a little. This kind of feeling seemed to have occurred to her before. Yes, it was the day when she accidentally heard that Li Nanheng was married. Her whole body was a little numb, and her heart had been twitching. It hurt so much that she didn't even have the strength to cry out in pain. Feng Ling was still helping him wipe, and now she had already wiped his neck. Li Nanheng suddenly raised his hand and held her empty hand. "Don't move," Feng Ling ordered in a low voice. Li Nanheng grunted, closed his eyes, and did not move his head on the pillow. However, his hand still held hers and did not let go. He even inserted his fingers between her fingers and held hers. Even such an intimate action still made Feng Ling unable to calm down. She couldn't figure out what Li Nanheng A person who had seen too many life and death situations was thinking at that moment. He was extremely angry and extremely afraid, so he suddenly went crazy. He did it because of her. She knew. It was precisely because she knew that Feng Ling's heart was indescribably shocked. Chapter 12:11. She only knew that Li Nanheng liked her and loved her, but she didn't know that he loved her so much. After wiping all the exposed parts of his clothes, she saw that although the man didn't have much expression, she remembered that before the doctor left, he said that he had a slight concussion. She could see from his unchanging expression that he had a headache, but he didn't show it in front of her. After checking his wounds, she put the towel aside, carefully helped him sit up, turned behind him, and put his head on her lap. Li Nanheng was about to get up, but she pressed him down hard. "Don't move." From watching him hit the car with her own eyes to now, she was like a little woman who had been angry in her heart. Her words were close to an order, as if they were really the main drill master and deputy drill master. Li Nanheng sighed and glanced at her. "I'm really fine." At this time, Feng Ling's hand gently pressed on his head. She didn't know how to do it, but she tried her best to help him relieve his headache with her hands. She slowly rubbed his temples and his head with her fingers. Li Nanheng closed his eyes comfortably, turned his head slightly, and leaned against her lower abdomen. Since he couldn't refuse, he might as well enjoy it like this. "Does it hurt?" Feng Ling wasn't sure how strong her hand was. Seeing that he closed his eyes and didn't speak, she asked in a low voice. At the same time, she glanced at his hand that had been simply stopped bleeding and was covered with a piece of white gauze. Unexpectedly, the man suddenly raised his injured hand and pulled down the head of Feng Ling, who was massaging him seriously. She was afraid that her struggle would hurt his hand too much, so she was suddenly pulled down by his hand. The moment she lowered her head and bent down, the man kissed her hard on her lips. After kissing her, he let go of her. Feng Ling suddenly sat up again and continued to massage his head. She gritted her teeth and warned, "Don't move anymore. Don't you know that you have a headache?" She couldn't remember when she had a slight concussion after returning from a mission. Although she recovered in a few days, she remembered that in the first few days, she had a headache and nausea every day and didn't want to move at all. "I'm not that weak. Why are you so nervous?" After the man kissed her, he willingly stopped moving. He rested his head on her lap and looked at her from below. "Tell me, what happened just now?" Feng Ling took out her cell phone and showed it to him. "It's a message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was a new number that a friend of mine changed to after arriving in Los Angeles. I was a little suspicious and guarded, but the mastermind clearly knew that I would be vigilant and suddenly arranged a drunkard to disturb me. At that time, I was annoyed by the drunkard and couldn't concentrate too much, so this accident happened. I'll pay attention in the future and won't make such a mistake again." Indeed, if Feng Ling's vigilance had been high enough, with her own agility, she would have been able to move back quickly. But at that time, no matter how fast her reaction speed was, it was still no match for the other party's car. If Li Nanheng hadn't bumped into her in time, she would have been directly knocked away. With the speed of the car, she would have been killed on the spot. Now, she wouldn't even have the chance to sit here and take a breath. Li Nanheng felt comfortable being pressed by her and couldn't help closing his eyes again. He only closed his eyes and said lightly, "Have you offended anyone outside the base?" "No, you should know very well how I usually do things. I never cause trouble, and I don't speak much to outsiders. How could I have offended anyone? Usually, the people who don't get along with me are the original members of Team 3, but they have been in the base for so many years, and they can be considered to be above board. Usually, they just want to talk. It's absolutely impossible for them to have the courage to do such an impulsive thing." Li Nanheng was silent for a moment and suddenly opened his eyes, looking at Feng Ling, who was still massaging his head obediently. She didn't offend anyone, so her existence threatened someone's interests or someone was afraid of her existence. She was someone who even handed over all her bank cards to him. Usually, she was only in the base. How could there be any conflict of interest? The only thing that her existence would really threaten was Feng Mingzhu's inheritance rights in the Feng family, as well as her emotional interests and feelings. In addition, although Li Nanheng was only guessing, the possibility was not low, especially since Feng Mingzhu's actions were exposed last time. It was not impossible for her to go to extremes. He raised his other uninjured hand and touched Feng Ling's eyebrows. All right, no need to massage. Feng Ling didn't move. She still insisted on massaging him, just wanted to make him more comfortable. The man smiled. Your move just like that? You said that I'm made of iron, but I thought your heart was made of iron. You can't see how much I care about you. Feng Ling's expression suddenly became a bit unnatural. While massaging his head, she turned her face away slightly and looked out of the window. At the same time, she said in a low voice, "What do you mean by made of iron? If my heart was really made of iron, I wouldn't have taken the initiative to come out of the base with you. I knew what you were thinking, but I still came out with you." Li Nanheng laughed out loud. If it weren't for the fact that he really didn't have much strength right now, he would have gotten up and pressed her under him. He would have kissed her, hugged her, and fiercely done it a few more times. After massaging for a while, Feng Ling thought that the man had fallen asleep on her lap. Suddenly, she heard him say in a low voice, "Today is just the beginning. The person behind this knows you well and even knows that you're in this hotel right now. I think you've been targeted. After returning to the base tomorrow, don't come out for the time being. Pay attention to the people around you. As for the people outside, focus on Feng Mingzhu." Hearing the words Feng Mingzhu, Feng Ling's hand did not stop. She also thought of this, but she was not sure. If it was really Feng Mingzhu, what was her motive? Was it just because she snatched Li Nanheng away? Or was there something deeper to it? She looked at the man who was lying on her lap with his eyes closed, enjoying her massage, and slowly pursed her lips without batting an eyelid. She always felt that Li Nanheng seemed to know something. Just like when she disguised as a man, he should have long known about it, but did not immediately expose it. It was as though nothing could be hidden from him. "Don't worry. Even if it's a sneak attack, no one can easily hurt me," Feng Ling said softly. Chapter 12:12. The man chuckled and was not stingy with his mockery. Who was the person who was almost killed in the parking lot just now? Feng Ling. That was just an accident. I was careless. In the future, I will definitely be more vigilant. Nothing will happen again. Li Nanheng was sure of this. As long as Feng Ling really realized it and kept her vigilance at all times, no one could get close to her and hurt her. The man chuckled softly. "So I should be grateful to you for letting your guard down this time. So you gave me a chance to save the damsel in distress?" Feng Ling was expressionless. "I'm a hero." The man raised his brows. "Then what am I?" She watched as the man rested on her lap. Although his face was slightly pale, it was still very good-looking. She placed a finger on her head, on his chin, and gently hooked it on his chin and face. "You are beautiful." Being teased by Feng Ling, who had always been reserved in matters of the heart, the man abruptly got up to kiss her. Before he could move, Feng Ling continued to press his head hard. "Don't move." Li Nanheng. He then sighed with a smile. "Little hero, you just woke up. The hot pot ingredients you brought back are still in the car. Are you hungry?" She was scared to death by the scene of him colliding with the car. How could she care about being hungry? Feng Ling said softly, "I'm not hungry. It's fine if I don't eat for 1 or 2 meals occasionally." "I'm hungry." When a man said these words, his eyes were fixed on her. This time, Feng Ling understood very quickly. When a man looked at her as he spoke, she immediately understood what he meant by hungry. Last night, he bullied her for so long, and he came twice in the morning. Hadn't she fed him enough? She did not speak, but glared at him. Then she gently placed his head back on the pillow, got up, and picked up the fruit on the coffee table on the sofa. She picked up an orange and walked back. As she walked, she peeled it and stuffed the orange into the man's mouth. "If you're hungry, eat the fruit first." One of the fruits that Li Nanheng hated the most was oranges. After being forced to take a bite, his entire face was so sour that he almost frowned. He tried to endure the taste of the orange and barely swallowed it. Looking at Feng Ling's calm appearance as she ate the orange, he was impressed. "You can even eat such sour food. Those who don't know will think you're pregnant." Because of his words, She subconsciously glanced at the used condoms in the trash can. She quickly ate the remaining orange and said, "It's not that sour. You think it's sour because you hate eating it, so your senses are magnified. A little sour taste is described as sour. In fact, it's quite sweet." Really? The man lay there obediently, without moving. He probably would have a headache if he really moved. So he didn't move and asked in a low voice, "How sweet is it?" Feng Ling walked over to help him lift the blanket. However, at this moment, the man suddenly raised his hand and pressed her head down. "Come, let me try it." Just as she was about to be kissed, Feng Ling quickly pressed the man's head back down, but she was careful not to make too much movement, lest it aggravate the discomfort of his concussion. However, after lying down for a long time, she guessed that he had recovered a lot and his face was not as pale as before. Thankfully, his injury was not serious. Otherwise, Feng Ling would not be in the mood to chat with him here. A few minutes later, the landline in the room rang. Feng Ling went to pick up the phone. It was a call from the police. After explaining the matter in detail, they asked if she had offended anyone or if there were any other clues. Feng Ling did not have any evidence, so she could not directly reveal the suspect. She simply told them what she saw and the text message she received. She also told them the number that sent the text message and hung up the phone. This call lasted for about 10 minutes. When she turned back, she saw that Li Nanheng's eyes were closed as if he had fallen asleep. The doctor did say that a concussion required more sleep and rest. No matter how good this man's stamina was, he didn't sleep at all last night or this morning. After going out, he probably didn't have a good rest. It was good to sleep for a while now. She was about to turn and walk out of the bedroom of the hotel suite when the man on the bed suddenly said, "Be good in the room and don't go out. When the snow on the road is clear tomorrow morning, we'll return to the base. It won't delay the training of the youth team." "Okay," Feng Ling responded. In fact, the balance in her heart was now leaning towards Li Nanheng. She could temporarily ask Han Jin to take care of the newbies in the base for a day or two. However, Li Nanheng's injury was not serious, so there was no need to trouble others, so she didn't say much. She only said, "I'll go get some food. You rest first." Li Nanheng, who was suddenly reduced to being taken care of by Feng Ling, did not speak but curved his lips slightly. Obviously, he was in good mood. Feng Ling stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window last night and looked at the snow outside. According to the information revealed by the police on the phone just now, the drunkard was really drunk. Although he was conscious of doing something, his thinking and speaking were not very clear. They had to wait until the concentration of alcohol in his body was gone before they interrogated him again. The other driver in the car had been lying in the treatment room since he was taken away. He was almost at his last breath and had not woken up yet. However, they had found out the identity of the driver. He was a local taxi driver in Los Angeles. He had been in gambling debt since last month and owed more than 1 million yuan to Las Vegas. His wife left with their child in a fit of anger. This was the family situation of the man, they found out. As for the account under his name, 3 days ago, he received a transfer of 2 million yuan from a mysterious anonymous account. Although the bank had the responsibility to cooperate with the police investigation and should try its best to find out who the mysterious account belonged to, some special banks in Los Angeles had a special system for some particularly rich families. That is, some VIP-level customers could hide their account names. In this case, it was very difficult to find out because this mode of hiding account names could not be found by the bank system. This was the distinguished treatment they gave VIP-level customers, which could be regarded as a loophole that had not been discovered, so there was no way to find out. Feng Ling could think of only a few people who wanted to kill her. Except for the people she had offended in the past, there seemed to be no one else. But if those people wanted to secretly murder her, they definitely wouldn't use such a simple method. Those people were used to violence and blood, and they wouldn't be ruthless and meticulous in doing things. Such a level of treatment in the bank. She picked up her cell phone, opened a locked photo album inside, and looked at the photo of the jade ring and the jade pendant that she had taken thoughtfully. Chapter 12:13. It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Although they did not intend to inform the base of this matter, the base had more or less heard some rumors from the police. Ah Fong specially called to ask if the base needed to resolve this matter. He was also concerned about Fong Ling's condition. After confirming that Li Nanheng's injuries were not serious and Fong Ling's emotions were not affected by this murder incident, he hung up the phone. However, before hanging up, he still said that Fong Ling was still a member of the base. In such a situation, the base could help her find the real culprit behind the scenes at any time. If this matter had nothing to do with Fong Mingzhu, it would not be a problem to leave it to the base. But now, even Fong Ling herself suspected Fong Mingzhu. This matter was related to the Fong family, and she and the Fong family. In short, it was not the time yet. Li Nanheng raised his wrist that the doctor had bandaged with gauze and comfortably rested on Fong Ling's lap again. If you're tired, close your eyes and sleep for a while. Fong Ling was still rubbing his head with her fingers and gently relaxing his temples and eyes from time to time. This way, his headache will be much better. At this moment, the hotel staff knocked on the door and delivered some ingredients that Fong Ling had asked them to buy. They also prepared some cooked food from the hotel. Fong Ling went to open the door, thanked them, and took the ingredients into the small kitchen in the suite. Although the hotel's kitchen was not big, fortunately, it was well equipped with seasonings and equipment. She had made a living in Boston for the past 2 years. Although she was not very proficient in cooking, she definitely knew how to do it. She washed and cut the fresh ingredients and specially used a pot to boil medicinal chicken soup. This was what she had learned from Xiaoba in High City. At that time, it tasted good and she remembered the method. She turned around and continued to cut some diced beef. She also used eggs, vegetables, and other ingredients to stir-fry 2 simple side dishes. After making these things, it was not suitable to eat toast or sandwiches. She went to the hotel to ask for some white rice and cooked it. She helped Li Nanheng sit on the bed. His injured hand was placed on the table by the bed, and his other hand was placed on his leg. Fong Ling stood by the bed. She scooped rice with a spoon to feed him, as well as various soups and stir-fried dishes. She fed him slowly, 1 mouthful at a time. However, she was also hungry, so while feeding him, she would occasionally take a few bites. Although she had prepared chopsticks, sometimes she would feed herself with a spoon out of habit. Although she had only done this 2 or 3 times, every time she mistakenly put the spoon he used in her mouth, she would be stunned. She looked up abruptly to see Li Nanheng sitting on the bed with a smile on his face in a very good mood. In this situation, she didn't have time to be shy or anything. She was also very straightforward. She had already done it, and it wasn't the first time. No matter how thin-skinned she was, it was time for her to pass this transition. Thus, she continued to feed him expressionlessly. However, this reminded her of the scene when she was injured or hospitalized in front of him. At that time, Li Nanheng often placed her in a most important position and often stayed by her side to take care of her. In the eyes of others, this cold and inhumane man seemed to really give her all his passion and patience. However, at that time, she always remained somewhat numb and did not respond. She even blindly believed that she should be a man and that nothing beyond her control should happen to her. However, in the end, she still unknowingly fell to this step. At that time, Li Nanheng was cold to her, but now, Li Nanheng ate contentedly and hugged her from the bed. He held her waist and held her in his arms, continuing to let her feed him medicinal chicken soup and food. I feel that I see many things too simply. Fong Ling held the bowl and allowed him to hold her like this. As she slowly fed him the soup, she said hesitantly and slowly, "I'm too selfish." She tightened her grip on the spoon. Since some things exist, I may have to face them sooner or later. Even if I don't want to face them, fate doesn't seem to want me to live like this forever. Her words were ambiguous, and most people would not be able to understand what she was saying. However, Li Nanheng heard it. She was thinking about her background and the Fong family. She was considering whether she should bravely face those things that were already close to the truth. But I don't think I like those. My world is very small. I can't accept so many complicated people and things. Before she could finish speaking, Li Nanheng suddenly pressed her heavily into his arms. He was originally holding her, so he pressed her heavily against his chest. Hey, slow down. The soup is going to spill. Feng Ling quickly steadied her hand. Seeing that only a drop of soup flowed along the edge of the bowl and had not spilled out, she quickly struggled out of his arms and wiped the edge of the bowl with a piece of paper. When she turned to look at him, she saw that Li Nanheng had no intention of telling her those things at all. She stared at him and thought of how this man had tortured her in bed last night. She really loved and hated him. In addition, the matter of the Feng family was entangled in her heart. In a moment of emotion, she suddenly opened her mouth and bit hard on his chin. The man was unmoved. When she bit hard, the man raised his uninjured hand to press the back of her head. He lowered his head and rubbed her lips back and forth patiently and gently. Then he used the tip of his tongue to open her lips. Feng Ling reluctantly opened her mouth, but in the end, the man gently pried it open. Then he bit her soft lips and kissed her deeper and deeper. At the end of the kiss, Feng Ling could feel the man's gentleness and pity from his kiss. She could also feel that he seemed to really know something. However, he knew her very well. If she didn't say it, he would never mention it. She had already been kissed so much that she couldn't help but put the bowl in her hand on the table by the side to prevent it from spilling. Seeing that her hand was empty, the man pinched her chin and kissed her for a long time. By the time Feng Ling noticed something, she lowered her head to see that she had unknowingly sat on his lap. Her hands were around his neck, and she took the initiative to respond. Although her response was shaky, the lower part of her body was pressed tightly against his. The man had clearly coughed. You're so injured, but you can still. She really couldn't say the words get hard. Just the first few words were said while panting. When she said it, she even tried to make her expression not look so shy. Chapter 12:14. It's my hand that's injured. It's my head, not here. As the man spoke, he pressed her with his uninjured hand and even straightened his hips. Feng Ling. She hurriedly tried to get down from the man's body, but the man refused to let go. I know you're tired. No, I just want to hug you. Li Nanheng didn't want to say that he just wanted to hug the 5-year-old little girl in her soul who was in a daze in the jungle. As he spoke, he hugged her tighter, rubbed the tip of his nose against her white and tender cheeks, and kissed the little dimples on her lips from time to time. There was a small dimple on one side of Feng Ling's mouth, which was not very obvious. She didn't usually like to smile, so it was even more difficult to see, but as long as she smiled, he would see a very shallow little dimple, which added a rare trace of playfulness to her originally cold and noble face. Your skin is already so good. In the future, you don't need to use those messy skincare products on your face like those women. Now it's smooth and tender. I can see that you don't like to use those things either. Really? More importantly, beauty is in my heart. Not to mention that you're already very beautiful right now. Even after 10, 20, or 30 years, I still won't get tired of looking at your face. I'll still hold it in my heart and love it because you're not someone else. You're Feng Ling. The man's kiss gently swept past her dimples and landed on the corner of her lips. He said softly, so, no matter if you are on the base or face your future with any other identity, you will always be you and will not change. I will always stand in front of you and will not leave. You don't have to be afraid of anything and don't let your imagination run wild. Feng Ling's expression changed a little. She nodded seriously. In the evening, the two of them did not return to the base. Even if they returned, it would probably be tomorrow morning. In the middle of the night, Nanheng seemed to have a low fever. Feng Ling had heard from Xiao Su in the base that Boss Li rarely got sick in the base, and his physical fitness was definitely top 100. However, after falling into the ice lake at Rogers Pass and having a fever for several days and nights, although Boss still rarely got sick as long as he had a fever, even if it was only a low fever of about 37. 5 degrees, he would still be affected. Especially the last few times Boss Li was injured in the hospital, the most serious was his high fever. Feng Ling borrowed a thermometer from a hotel. After taking it, she saw that it was 37. 8 degrees. The fever was not serious. Perhaps the wound on his wrist was stimulated by some of the gas released when the airbag broke. Even though it had been treated, there was still some infection. This temperature was indeed not high, but Li Nanheng did breathe heavily when he was asleep. He should not be very comfortable. He woke up after a while and said that he was a little thirsty. Feng Ling rushed to pour water for him. She had specially boiled the water so that he could drink more hot water. The water was still very hot. She came back with the cup in her hands. It was so hot that she raised one hand to touch her ear from time to time. She swapped hands to touch her ears and quickly walked back to the bed. She blew the water by the bed for a while. Li Nanheng was not in a good state, but when he heard her hissing as she blew the water, he frowned. Fearing that she was scalded, he supported his body with one hand on the bed. Feng Ling knelt on one knee by the bed and fed the water to his mouth. Li Nanheng was about to say something to her, but the water was no longer so hot. He paused and didn't say anything in the end. He drank up the glass of water. "Do you want more?" Feng Ling took out a tissue to wipe the water leaking from the corner of his mouth. Li Nanheng's mouth was a little dry just now, but after being moistened, it was not as pale as before. "Enough." The man's voice was slightly hoarse. Obviously, he did not realize that he was having a fever. "Sleep early. I'm fine." With that, he closed his eyes. He probably hadn't woken up yet. Feng Ling went to put the cup away and then pressed her slightly cold hand against his forehead. The man closed his eyes and was half asleep. However, feeling the coolness of her hand, he leaned in her direction comfortably. He suddenly turned over, hugged her tightly with both hands, and pressed her down with his legs. "Lie down. Don't press your hands," Feng Ling reminded him. She felt that she was leaning against the stove. It was not even 38 degrees, but such a hug still made her feel that this man was as hot as a stove. Li Nanheng did not move. It seemed that he had fallen asleep again. Feng Ling wanted to push him, but she saw that he seemed to be sleeping very peacefully and did not subconsciously frown because of the fever. She did not sleep well last night and had been taking care of him in the afternoon. She was indeed very tired and sleepy. If it weren't for his fever, she would have already laid down beside him and slept for a while. Just sleep like this. Li Nanheng seemed to have fallen asleep, but he suddenly said this. Then he pressed her into his arms and told her to sleep immediately. Feng Ling did not break free. Although the man's body was very hot, his body was still unique to her, especially when this man left so many marks on her body yesterday. After being kissed and hugged by him for an entire night, she became more and more sensitive to the smell of his body. Now that she was leaning against him, she felt that all the hair on her body stood up and her blood was about to boil. "Be good. I don't need to take medicine for a low fever. I know my own body well. I'll be fine tomorrow morning," the man said again, successfully suppressing the worry in Feng Ling's heart. It was indeed not serious, but she was afraid that he would be too uncomfortable. After all, he still had a concussion. However, the man's voice was low and gentle. The temperature of his body was so hot that it made her sleepy. After a while, she closed her eyes. This night, she slept very peacefully. Feng Ling knew that if Li Nanheng hadn't needed to rest last night, he would definitely have done something to her if he had stayed in the hotel for another night. She remembered that when she didn't know what time she slept last night, the man might have woken up halfway. He held her and kissed her forehead and the tip of her nose for a long time. In the end, he kissed her mouth. Although his lower body was clearly pressed against her valiantly, he did not continue to do anything but just held her in his arms. Feeling that he probably did not want to do anything, she continued to sleep after being kissed awake. She slept until the morning. The sky was still dark, and she had to return to the base. Li Nanheng's fever had indeed subsided when he woke up in the morning. The symptoms of his concussion were not as serious as yesterday. He did not say that he had a headache. Except for the obvious gauze on his hand, he did not look like he had been injured. After waking up, he asked her if she wanted to stay outside for a few more days or return to the base. Chapter 12:15. The newbies of Team 1 were still waiting for her to go back from morning training. Since Li Nanheng was fine, of course she would choose to go back. After all, even if Li Nanheng asked her to be more casual, She thought that she could return to the base now and obtain the identity of an instructor for the newbies. This was a smooth road that Li Nanheng had planned for her. She had to remember her responsibilities and not be too willful and rash. Since she had taken over those newbies, she had to be responsible to the end. However, although he had returned to the base, Li Nanheng received a call and learned that there was a business banquet in Los Angeles in the evening that Li Nanheng needed to attend on behalf of the Li Corporation. Feng Ling saw that he was fine except for his hand injury, and he represented the Li Corporation, so she couldn't interrupt him. She only told him not to touch the water and didn't say much. However, Li Nanheng took the opportunity to ask her to go to the banquet with him tonight when she walked out of the training ground. Feng Ling was about to say no, but he said that Jin Wan would also go tonight with him. Hearing Jin Wan, Feng Ling wavered. Originally, she wanted to stay in the base to teach the few people in her team who were a little slow in training and couldn't keep up with the physical training movements, but she hadn't seen Jin Wan for many days since she came back. She didn't know how Jin Wan was living in the Mo family in Los Angeles recently. She must be very happy with Mr. Mo every day. Feng Ling also missed her. For Jin Wan's sake, she agreed to go to the banquet. After deciding on this matter, Feng Ling turned to return to the training ground. When she looked back, she saw that a few newbies seemed to want to sneak out to rest while she was away, but they didn't expect her to be outside the door. She looked back and saw the two of them. Feng Ling's expression turned cold, and she stared at them like a knife. The two of them. They almost knelt down. In the end, Feng Ling kicked them back to the training ground with a cold face and punished them to do 300 push-ups on the spot. In the end, the two of them were so tired that they lay on the ground like dead dogs and could not move. In the next hour, the news that Feng Ling and the deputy drill master were chatting intimately outside the training ground suddenly spread in their team. Everyone suspected that the deputy drill master fawned on drill master Feng because of his looks. How could drill master Feng be so easily won over by a man? How could she fall in love? She must not fall in love. The deputy drill master must be chasing after her. The group of people trained and brainwashed themselves, but Feng Ling stood calmly in front of the door and looked at each of them. Whoever made a wrong move, she casually threw a stone at the numbing acupoint on the other party's arm. In an instant, the other party stood up straight and did not dare to be careless at all. Noon, base cafeteria. Feng Ling was eating. Since Wan Ku was warned, he didn't continue to show his existence around her, but Feng Ling actually didn't hate him, so she nodded to him when she saw him. However, at this moment, several other boys who were not afraid of death sat by her side with plates and asked her questions from time to time. At first, Feng Ling answered a few words, but later, these people asked her why she suddenly put on a high-collared shirt. Although it snowed yesterday, it was very warm to wear a uniform in the base. She didn't need to wear too thick clothes, but she even wore a high-collared shirt. They even asked her if she was afraid of the cold. Feng Ling calmly touched her collar, lest the bite marks left by a certain bastard would be seen. If they were seen, she really wouldn't have the face to pretend to be aloof in front of this group of newcomers and think of a way to suppress them. Well, I'm afraid of the cold, she explained coldly and then frowned. Are you all very free? Why are you all surrounding me? Why are you all surrounding me? I've been worried about you on the training ground all morning. Can't you leave me alone for a while at noon? Seeing that she was about to lose her temper, they quickly retreated from the scene. They had wanted to ask a few questions about her and the deputy drill master, but in the end, they found that they didn't have a chance to ask. Because Feng Ling was almost murdered in the hotel, Li Nanheng still needed to personally investigate the situation. He had to investigate all aspects, including the bank. So he didn't come to train these newbies this morning. Feng Ling thought that he would go out with him to attend a banquet in the evening and she would train them by herself in the afternoon. In the end, when she was finally able to have a quiet meal alone, a certain deputy drill master appeared in front of her. Seeing that the man did not eat and only took a cup of coffee to sit down, she raised her eyes to look at him. At the same time, she suddenly felt that the newcomers were quietly looking at her from all directions. They were curious about who the deputy drill master was and wanted to know if there was anything fishy between the deputy drill master and her. Feng Ling retracted her gaze. only to see that the man was looking at her calmly, as if there was no one else around him. She glanced at the coffee cup in his hand and whispered, "You just had a fever last night. Why are you drinking coffee today? Do you think I'm sick?" "It's just a minor headache and fever, but I've already recovered in the morning." The man picked up the cup and took a sip. Obviously, he had long sensed the gazes around him, but he had always been calmer than Feng Ling in such matters. He did not show any change in his emotions and continued to drink his coffee without being affected in the slightest. It seemed as though everyone's gaze had nothing to do with him. "You don't come to the base cafeteria to eat. Why are you sitting here?" Feng Ling whispered to remind him to behave in front of the newbies. The man just glanced at her and said indifferently, "After many investigations and bank records, we have found the person who transferred the money to the SUV driver." "Who is it?" Feng Ling paused and looked up at him. Li Nanheng looked at her silently for a moment, as if some deeper truth was about to be revealed. In fact, Feng Ling also knew that if it was really Feng Mingzhu, it meant that she was really a member of the Feng family. Otherwise, Feng Mingzhu would just be jealous and wouldn't bribe someone to kill her. If it was really her, she didn't even need to ask. Everything would be clear. Li Nanheng's slender fingers slowly rubbed the wall of the cup. He said, "Feng Mingzhu, dash. The plot has already begun to advance at full speed. Dear friends, after watching for so long, you should be able to see that the various torture scenes you thought were actually not torture. There are no terrible torture scenes, so you don't have to worry too much about any disgusting scenes happening in a later stage. Of course, it's necessary to have both sweetness and torture, but it will definitely be very exciting. Sweetheart, I suggest throwing monthly votes at Ching Ching's head." Chapter 12:16. When the truth came, Feng Ling found that she was much calmer than she had imagined. Li Nanheng didn't hesitate for a moment. Obviously, he had already seen that she was prepared. Feng Ling was silent for a long time and didn't say anything. She lowered her head and ate a few more mouthfuls. After saying that name, Li Nanheng didn't speak again, nor did he drink any more coffee. He just looked at her patiently. After eating a few more mouthfuls, she put down her chopsticks and said in a low voice, "I saw Mrs. Feng a while ago. She said that Feng Mingzhu went abroad with her friends to relax. Relaxing doesn't mean living outside for a long time. She came back long ago." That's right. She had never thought about Feng Mingzhu's matter. She had a vague idea of many things, but at this moment, she was clearer than ever. After a moment of silence, she looked up at him. "What do you know?" Li Nanheng's eyes were indifferent, but there was some patience and gentleness that only she could see. "I know what you know and what you don't know." Feng Ling, so now perhaps it was time to uncover the truth, such as the blood relationship between her and the Feng family that had been tested by DNA, and the cenotaph he married 3 years ago was her. But right now, all of Feng Ling's thoughts and energy were occupied by the work of the youth team. She was too responsible for these team members, and all of a sudden, everything fell on her head. No matter how strong her heart was, she wouldn't be able to digest it so easily. After the assessment of the newcomer team next week, when everything is settled, I'll show you something. Li Nanheng tapped his fingers on the coffee cup and looked straight into her eyes. Focus on what you're doing first. Don't think too much. This kind of petty scheme can't hurt you at all. As long as you're vigilant enough, that kind of young lady who has been raised in a boudoir is no match for you at all. But you're injured. Li Nanheng sneered, leaned his upper body against the table, and leaned forward toward her. Although he didn't lean too close, his sudden move still attracted the attention and curious gazes of the newcomers in the cafeteria. He ignored the gazes around him and looked at her. "Does your heart ache?" Feng Ling sat there without moving. "I was very distressed at that time. I didn't hide it." Li Nanheng smiled in satisfaction, but he said, "It's my fault. At that time, I saw that the car was about to collide with us, so I was impulsive. Otherwise, why would I hurt myself when I could have solved the problem with one shot? However, at that time, there was a car between them, and it was useless to shoot. Even if they managed to burst the car's tires, the car would still be able to kill Feng Ling with its inertia. Thus, it was useless to shoot at that time unless they used the front of their car to crash into it head-on. Fortunately, Li Nanheng's injury was not serious. He only had a slight cut on his hand and a shock, but it was not a big problem. He would recover in a few days. Feng Ling suddenly turned to look at the people around her, only to see that the newcomers were looking at her and Li Nanheng with curiosity and gossip in their eyes. It seemed that they had finally confirmed that there was definitely something going on between her and this deputy drill master, whose identity she didn't know. She suddenly retracted her gaze and looked at him. "If you're done, you can go now." When Li Nanheng heard this, he immediately raised his eyebrows coldly. "You want me to let you go after using you? Isn't she the one who cried and called me husband that night?" Feng Ling, Li Nanheng's voice was not loud, and no one else dared to sit at this table, so of course no one else could hear him. However, the effect of this sentence still caused Feng Ling's spine to heat up. She couldn't believe it, but seemed to have some impression of it. When did I ever call you that?" The little woman had been oppressed by him on the bed for a long time, and in the end, her voice was hoarse from shouting. After being stimulated several times, she became extremely obedient in the end. He coaxed her into saying whatever he wanted her to say. At that time, she was really forced to call him hubby a few times. She even called him Big Brother Nanheng several times with a face full of shame and embarrassment. Pretending to have amnesia? Are you going to rest outside after the banquet tonight to help Zhang Yin recall her memories? Feng Ling, you just had a concussion yesterday. You're really worthy of the word beast. My own woman moves around in front of me every day, especially in the base. I can see her, but can't touch her. I've been holding it in for so long. After leaving the base, it's better to be a beast than a beast. Feng Ling couldn't win against him, so she simply ignored him and warned him not to get too close to her in front of so many newcomers. Li Nanheng looked at the high-collared shirt she was wearing and smiled. He didn't go too far and followed her instructions. Night, Los Angeles, a business dinner party. Feng Ling didn't want to change her clothes. Anyway, she just thought she was Li Nanheng's attendant or bodyguard. She certainly wouldn't appear in such a place in a gown like other women. Li Nanheng let her be. He represented the Li Corporation tonight, not 11 Base, so he changed into a suit so as not to be disrespectful to the organizer. As for Feng Ling, he would let her wear the uniform if she wanted to. He didn't want others to see her amazing side. It was enough for her to stay quietly by his side. That night, Jinwan did go with Mo Jingshan. Mo Jingshan's injury in Cambodia had already healed a lot. Recently, the couple had been staying at the Mo family in Los Angeles. Feng Ling didn't know much about the situation there, but she heard that Chairman Mo had to accept Jinwan due to Mo Jingshan's pressure, and Mrs. Mo, Ms. Wanzhu, liked Jinwan very much, so they got along well. Seeing the pregnant Jinwan appear in the banquet hall with Mo Jingshan with a red face and bright eyes, Feng Ling knew that she was in a good mood recently, and everything was fine. While Li Nanheng was talking with others, Feng Ling took the time to say hello to Jinwan. After a while, she was taken away by Li Nanheng. As they chatted, she was pushed into a corner of the banquet hall by this man who couldn't help being horny as long as he left the base. He pressed her against the wall and lowered his head to whisper in her ear all kinds of embarrassing words that made her so angry that she bit him twice. However, there was an important call on Li Nanheng's cell phone. The banquet hall was too noisy, so he turned to answer the call. Only then did she catch her breath. She looked around the banquet hall and suddenly found that Jinwan had disappeared. Chapter 12:17. Feng Ling's eyelids twitched. She had been with Jinwan for a long time and had instinctively sensed the danger around Jinwan. Suddenly, she heard a scream from the direction of the bathroom. The scream didn't sound like Jinwan, but the scream was drowned out by the lively banquet hall. Only Feng Ling, who had just walked to the bathroom, could hear it clearly. She walked quickly to the bathroom and was about to push it open, only to find that the door was locked from the inside. "Mrs. Mo, is she inside?" Feng Ling frowned, leaned against the door, and asked, "Jinwan?" It was quiet inside, and no one answered. Even the person who screamed just now was silent. She suddenly raised her foot and kicked the door hard. and the loud crash shocked everyone in the banquet hall. As the bathroom door lock was broken, Feng Ling quickly pushed the door open and searched inside with her sharp eyes, only to find that there was no one in the bathroom. The scream just now was not Jin Wan, but the things scattered on the floor of the bathroom were Jin Wan's. Jin Wan and Su Shui were both taken away at this banquet. However, the most unexpected thing was that Mr. Mo, who had always planned everything, was finally in a passive position in this disaster. Worried about Jin Wan's safety because she was pregnant, he searched for Jin Wan overnight. It was not until dawn that he finally found some clues and learned the purpose of the person who instructed them to kill Jin Wan and Su Shui. Ignoring the wound on his back that had not fully recovered, Mr. Mo drove directly to a certain highway in Los Angeles. A few people from 11 Base arrived, and everyone drove to the highway, intending to attack from all sides. However, there was only one highway, and there was no way to get to the highway in a short distance, so they could only chase after them. If Feng Ling could predict the result in advance, she would rather have been the one rushing to the front of the truck than to see Mr. Mo covered in blood and unconscious in the deformed car, or to see the pool of blood flowing out of Jin Wan's lower body. At that time, their car was following closely behind, and as they chased, they found that the speeding giant truck had been chasing in the direction of the car, where Jin Wan and Su Shui were kidnapped. In Li Nanhing's car, Feng Ling sat on the passenger seat and stared in that direction with a frown. Li Nanhing saw that the car was filled with killing intent earlier than her. He did not bat an eyelid, but sped up. However, Li Nanhing's hand had just been injured and was wrapped in gauze, so he could not control the steering wheel as flexibly as usual. Just when Li Nanhing couldn't stop the tragedy from happening, Mr. Mo's black Bentley suddenly rushed forward at a terrifying speed. At that time, Feng Ling had a deep impression of him. She suddenly heard Li Nanheng say hoarsely, "Feng Ling, close your eyes." However, before he finished speaking, the two cars collided, and the huge shock shook the entire highway. Feng Ling clearly felt that Li Nanheng was so angry that he almost lost control of the car. She quickly rushed forward with a stiff face, only to see that the black Bentley had been smashed into a horrible and strange shape. Mr. Mo must be dead. Li Nanheng's eyes turned red. He immediately took off the gauze on his wrist, threw it at his feet, and jumped out of the car to solve the situation. Feng Ling's mind went blank. She looked at the Bentley and suddenly turned to look at Jin Wan, who had fallen on the highway, and hurriedly got out of the car to help her up. She couldn't forget Jin Wan's heart-wrenching cries at that time. She couldn't forget the gasoline flowing out of the black Bentley mixed with the scarlet blood. She couldn't forget the blood flowing out of Jin Wan's lower body before she fainted. She couldn't forget the scene when Li Nanheng pulled out a gun and pointed it at the driver in the giant truck with red eyes, wanting to shoot hundreds of holes in his body. But Kay and the others held him tightly and stopped him. The truth hadn't been found out. Even if the people of 11 Base had the right to hold guns, even if Mr. Mo was in the other car, even if everyone wanted to blow up that car, everyone knew that if Li Nanheng really shot at that time, 11 Base and Li Nanheng would be implicated, so they wouldn't be able to help Mr. Mo at all and would only make the whole thing more complicated. Li Nanheng knew the seriousness of the whole thing better than anyone else, but Kay and the others could see that Boss Li was really angry. He almost shot, but several brothers stepped forward to stop him, grabbed his wrist, and pressed his hand hard to stop him from shooting. After a few seconds of silence, Li Nanheng came to his senses at a speed beyond anyone's imagination. He coldly ordered everyone to sort out the evidence at the scene, pry open the Bentley door, and find a way to rescue Mr. Mo. Feng Ling couldn't go there to help now. Jin Wan, who had fainted because of the great sadness, fear, and miscarriage, was enough to make her heart ache. After taking Jin Wan into the car, she looked in the rearview mirror at the Bentley that the brothers of 11 Base had pried open and at Mr. Mo's body, which was carefully carried out of the car. There was blood everywhere, blood. Seeing this, Feng Ling's heart ached, and she drove Jin Wan to the hospital first. This incident caused a stir in the lives of Mr. and Mrs. Mo and shocked the Mo family in Los Angeles. When Director Mo and Ms. Wan Zhu arrived at the hospital, Jean Wan had just had an abortion and was still unconscious. Mr. Mo was still in emergency treatment, and his condition was unknown. In the short time of watching over Jean Wan in the hospital, Feng Ling's heart sank to the bottom. She couldn't accept that such a thing would suddenly happen to Mr. and Mrs. Mo, who were so happy and loving. Mr. Mo couldn't die. Otherwise, how could Jean Wan live? But the only thing Feng Ling could do now was to go to the hospital to accompany Jean Wan when she had time. After all, this was Los Angeles, and Director Mo and Ms. Wan Zhu were in the hospital every day. She couldn't make any decisions for Jean Wan and Mr. Mo, especially when Ms. Wan Zhu sat in Jean Wan's ward and kept holding back her tears. Feng Ling could do nothing but stand quietly and watch. In the face of life and death, people were really too small. Sometimes, Feng Ling thought of Su Shui, who died on the highway, thought of Su Zhilan, and thought of the scene when Mr. Mo's Bentley was hit on the highway. Sometimes, she thought of the SUV that rushed straight at her in the underground parking lot of the hotel that day. She couldn't understand. If she was really the daughter of the Feng family, no matter how dissatisfied Feng Mingzhu was with her, she was still her biological sister. How could her biological sister want to kill her? Chapter 12:18. She couldn't figure out many things related to life and human nature, which lingered in her heart and made her suffer from insomnia several times. So after staying in the hospital for 3 days and suffering from insomnia, she finally sat down on the bench in the hospital corridor and fell asleep with her eyes closed. When she woke up, she found that she had been sent back to 11 base and was lying in her own room upstairs in the base hall. She closed her eyes, thinking that she had just had a nightmare, but then Kay called her. "Feng Ling, you've been in the hospital for 3 days. Boss asked me to send you back to rest. The newcomers are going to take the assessment soon. Don't come to the hospital for the next few days." Kay said, "There's no need to stay in a hospital like this. Jean Wan's miscarriage has become a fact, and Mr. Mo is not out of danger yet. Our brothers and the people of Shine Group are here. Don't worry, we can help you. You will collapse if you stay like this. Boss is busy dealing with the affairs of the Mo family and the Su family, as well as the murderer. He can't find time to go back these 2 days. Stay in the base and don't let us worry about you." Of course, Feng Ling knew that it was useless for her to stay in Jean Wan's ward. But when she saw Jean Wan sitting silently on the bed after waking up, looking very calm and not crying, she felt even more uncomfortable. But it was true that the brothers of the base had all been there. Li Nanheng had seen this with his own eyes, and it was about Mr. Mo. He couldn't stand by and let the whole thing be handled by various parties. Even if she went there, Jean Wan wouldn't talk to anyone. She just stood by. In the face of life and death, nothing mattered. Feng Ling was under a lot of pressure. After hanging up the phone, she lay on the bed, thinking that she couldn't fall asleep, but she was really too tired these days. She thought about what happened to Jean Wan in the past few days and the scenes on the highway that day, and finally fell asleep. When she woke up in the afternoon, she was in a much better state of mind. She went out of the room and met Ah Feng downstairs. Ah Feng gave her an understanding look. "I know you have a good relationship with Mrs. Mo. Now that something happened to Mr. Mo and Mrs. Mo, you can't calm down for a while. I can understand. If you really don't have the energy to continue teaching, I can send someone else to teach you, but don't go back to the hospital. Boss specifically told me not to leave the base, to eat and rest on time, and not to stay up night after night. It's okay. I'm much better after a day's rest. I'll call the hospital in the evening. Tomorrow morning training will be carried out as usual, and the assessment will be held soon. I have to live up to the efforts of the newcomers," Feng Ling said softly. Ah Feng nodded. "If you think you can adjust your mood and state well, of course, no one can replace your position in the hearts of the members. Since it has happened, we can only solve it. The brothers in the base are used to life and death. I believe they can adjust their state well." Feng Ling didn't speak anymore, but walked out in silence, sitting on the stone bench outside the base hall for an afternoon and an evening. The next day, when it was time for morning training, the members of Team 1, who had been training by themselves for 3 days, were surprised to find that Drill Master Feng Ling, who had been missing for 3 days, had come back and was waiting for them in the training ground as early as before. The group of newcomers hurried into the training ground for morning training. However, because Feng Ling was not around in the past few days, a few bad-tempered people who liked to say angry words said that the assessment was coming soon. A few days ago, the 2 drill masters were not around, and they thought that their team had been abandoned, causing the atmosphere in the entire team to be a little gloomy. It was as though they were really going to be abandoned. Even when they were training, they could not give them any energy. Looking at their state, Feng Ling narrowed her eyes coldly. Mo Jingxin was not out of danger yet. Tubes of various colors were inserted all over his body, and he was surrounded by medical equipment. In the enclosed ICU, even the glass windows outside the ward were not allowed to enter. Every day, there was only 1 or 2 hours when they could see the people inside through the glass windows. All the top doctors in the world were gathered here, trying to save people, but the waiting time was the longest. Whether he could survive or not depended on whether he could hold on to his last breath or not. In the next few days, Feng Ling stayed in the ward for a few days, and Li Nanheng almost didn't sleep. He ran around and was worried about the hospital. The accident made almost all his acquaintances lose a lot of weight, especially Jean Wan, who had just had a miscarriage. Everyone was worried that she would take things too hard, but they found that she seemed to be calmer than everyone else and didn't need anyone to worry about her at all. In the face of such a major accident, she was so sensible that it made people's hearts ache. He looked at Mo Jingxin outside the ICU again. When he came out again, Li Nanheng pinched between his eyebrows, and Kei came over. "Boss, just now the base called and said that Feng Ling has returned to the youth training team. His mental state seems to have returned to normal, but the ignorant members of the youth training team often speak with dissatisfaction and are very negative. They feel that they may not be able to get good results in this newcomer assessment." Speaking of this, Kei continued angrily, "It's really a waste of Feng Ling's effort to teach them. She gets up earlier than them and sleeps later than them every day. It's just that she stayed in the hospital for 3 days and couldn't go back. In the end, they all became ingrates." Damn. Listening to this, Li Nanheng walked to the smoking room at the end of the hospital corridor, lit a cigarette, and put it in his mouth. With the strength of the cigarette, he recovered a little, looked down at the time, and said, "How many days before the newcomer assessment?" 4 days on Sunday. A puff of white smoke came out of the man's mouth. "Since she has the ability to teach 20 disobedient boys a lesson, she will be able to teach them a lesson again. Don't worry, she has her own way of doing things. I know Feng Ling is fine, but isn't she still worried about Jean Wan? I'm afraid she'll be under too much pressure. If she's really bullied by those insensible brats, my heart will ache." As soon as Kei said this, he suddenly paused. Seeing Boss Li squinting at him meaningfully with a cigarette in his mouth, Kei hurriedly said with a strong desire to survive, "Well, it's because we are worried about each other." Li Nanheng sneered. "I know better than my own woman whether she can bear the burden on her shoulders or not. Don't worry about her and go to work." "Okay." Chapter 12:19. Don't be depressed. Drillmaster Feng Ling has repeatedly emphasized that our team's overall training performance and level are higher than that of Team 2. We will definitely get a good result in the assessment. Why are you still so suspicious? Although Drillmaster Feng is indeed very good, very professional, very cool, and indeed very strict when she's strict, she is, after all, a woman. Recently, I often see her sitting there in a daze alone. Women are really too emotional. I don't know what she is thinking about. Anyway, it definitely has nothing to do with us. I think she just took the time to come back to brush us off. She doesn't care about us at all. That's right. That's right. That's right. All right, don't say such things. Have you forgotten that she was taken out to do devil training 2 days ago? Do you think she didn't hear you? She just doesn't want to argue with you. Be content. We usually practice well. Hey, look at her face today. It's very bad. I don't know if something happened to her or if she's in love. That's why she looks so unstable. Don't say that. Drill Master Feng Ling was fine a few days ago. I think she's not feeling well today. Women are so troublesome. They have all kinds of reasons every day. TSK, TSK. On the day of the rookie assessment, Lin Nanheng finally rushed back from the hospital. In order not to affect the psychological state of these rookies or Feng Ling, he kept a low profile when he came back and didn't tell anyone. When the rookies began to compete with each other on the field, he found a place to sit beside the members of Team 1. But he heard a few people discussing in low voices around him. Han Jin, who was also sitting next to him, looked back at those people, frowned, and whispered in Lin Nanheng's ear, "These unsatisfied brats." Feng Ling is a person who keeps things to herself. She is too worried about Mr. and Mrs. Mo, so it's impossible for her to explain to these rookies. So even if she misunderstood them, she didn't say anything. She still trained very responsibly every day. I don't know what these brats are thinking. Just because Feng Ling often sits there alone and doesn't say anything recently, they insist that Drill Master Feng Ling is a woman. So she has too many things on her mind and doesn't have much time to train them. The overall condition of this team is good, but after all, there's still a few troublemakers. Can't they see that Feng Ling gets up earlier than them every day and sleeps later than them? Or can't they see that every time they train, she is very responsible for adjusting their postures for them one by one? When she has a little private time, she will be alone for a while, or take time to call Jin Wan and feel sorry for her for a while. How can it be considered unprofessional? She is a woman, so it's wrong? Damn, if I were the referee this time, I would ***king kick all these ignorant brats out of the base. None of them can officially enter the base. A group of idiots who don't understand human language. Li Nanheng sat quietly on the steps next to the team members, looking at the direction where Feng Ling stood, and did not speak. A few of the team members saw him, but they had always been a little afraid of this deputy drill master who could make them vomit blood as soon as he appeared, so they didn't dare to talk anymore. When they passed by him, they nodded to him awkwardly and then quickly walked away in front of him. Xiao Su also came over. Alphonse was presiding over the assessment in the field and couldn't come over. When he approached, he asked in a low voice, "Boss, don't you plan to go to the front for the assessment? They still don't know that you are back, and Feng Ling is still in the front." "How's the hospital?" Mr. Mo, sitting here, can more intuitively see more of the real side, Li Nanheng said lazily. Mo Jingshun is out of danger, but he hasn't woken up yet. Xiao Su sighed. Anyway, it's good that he is out of danger, which means that he is one step closer to waking up. During the intermission of the assessment, Feng Ling disappeared. Li Nanheng took a look at the time and got up to go to the bathroom. We passed by the women's bathroom specially set up for Feng Ling. He heard footsteps inside. Considering that it was now the assessment period, she didn't have the energy to deal with too many things. Seeing that he was back, she would definitely ask more about Mo Jingshen and Jinwan. So he didn't show up, but went to the men's bathroom and stood for a while. When Li Nanheng turned into the bathroom, Feng Ling happened to come out from the opposite side. She seemed to be in a good state of mind. She was dressed in a black battle uniform. The design of the uniform for the past 2 years was a little tight, showing off her figure. Wearing it on her body, she had curves in all the right places. Amidst the coldness and elegance, there was a unique sense of sexiness hidden under her clothes. Feng Ling, who was usually serious in the base, was the only one who knew how perfect and sexy her figure was after taking off her clothes. Feng Ling seemed to have just washed her face in the bathroom, and her chin was still dripping with water. She wiped it with a paper and walked out, holding a small pack of sanitary napkins in her hand, which she put into a pocket as she walked. No wonder her condition was fine, but her complexion was so pale. No wonder the troublemaker in the youth training team said that she didn't look well today. She should be on her period. The things she experienced in the past few days and the psychological pressure made her period a little heavier this time. She was obviously very uncomfortable. Sure enough, when Feng Ling was about to walk out of the bathroom, she suddenly stopped, raised her hand to her stomach, and stood there for a long time. Seeing that she had a stomachache, Li Nanheng came out of the bathroom and went over to support her arm. If you're not feeling well, go back to rest. I'll watch them in the second half. Feng Ling was startled by the person who suddenly appeared next to her and turned her head sharply. When she saw it was Li Nanheng, she was even more surprised. Aren't you in the hospital? What did you come back? You've worked so hard to train such a team. It wasn't easy for them to survive until the day of the assessment. Of course, I'll come back at such an important time. Li Nanheng looked at her hand that was moving away from her stomach. Period? Feng Ling nodded. I'll send you back to rest. No need. Feng Ling quickly stood firm and didn't let him help her walk. There was no one near the bathroom. She took a deep breath to relieve the discomfort in her abdomen and then said, "Just now, I felt that someone was looking at me in the men's bathroom. I thought you couldn't come back because there were too many things in hospital. I thought someone in the base saw me and hid inside. I didn't expect it to be you." Surprised? The man asked with a smile. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.